We need some music for this one. This is
Da-da-da-da.
late night. It should be mellow. Late night reef talk. Next
All right.
to the tank.
Yes. What's up, YouTube?
What's happening?
All right. We moved it up a little bit.
Saturday.
Well, because last night I got home at 10:30 and realized my wife just put 3 kids to bed and that I was in big trouble. So moved it up. I can now do bath time and stuff with my kids. So yesterday, my favorite comment on yesterday's nutrient video.
That was huge. Yeah, I saw that.
My favorite one was Devin.
He texted us this afternoon. He goes, "How do you guys feel about 52 weeks of reefing updated 2020?"
Yes,
that wasn't your favorite one?
No,
that was my favorite one.
52 weeks 2020, 2021. Maybe it's coming. I don't know.
Ooh.
That'll be fun.
Updated.
I have to think about how we'd address it. No, it's actually
Right.
Devin.
Yeah.
So Devin says from Reef Dudes says, so I started watching this at home, and then I got in my car, drove up the mountain, did a few runs in the skis, and you guys are still going on. I love the super long content. So I don't know. We'll see how long. Yesterday was 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Rogan style.
I don't know. We'll see if we can get past that. I don't know.
We do have, yesterday there was like 90 some bullet points. I'm looking at 95 here today.
Oh my gosh.
So.
All right. It's totally different though. It's going to be a totally different format. We're talking calcium,
Yes.
alkalinity, magnesium, trace elements, the DIY approach, the most advanced approach. 16 years.
16 years of how we remember it and what we learned. It's awesome. These are really good. I like these. It
Forces me to think back about all of the things we've learned.
I mean, there's
It's
so
really
many
fun.
topics that we can hit too. So, I mean, we got 11 days of this. You guys will not get bored. There's a ton of topics.
All right. So if you want to know the best possible path of calcium and alkalinity, I don't know, maybe it's today. Hopefully by the end of it, I think you'll probably know everything we know.
We also have that, remember yesterday we gave out that $1 million idea? You want to be $1 million reefer?
Yes, we got another one.
There's one in here today in the future. When we get to what we want to see in the future, there's an idea out there for somebody who
Yeah, if you're not lazy and you want to make
some money.
millions, there's an idea in here. You could do it. And you'll definitely. So it's coming 2 hours and 19 minutes from now. All right. So you're going to hear these things. So we'll break it up into a few things. So this is like a retrospective or history of calcium and alkalinity, at least as I remember it within the last 16 years.
Come a long way.
2004 is about where I started. It might have been 13 or 2003. I don't know, but somewhere right in there. So let's talk about 2004. What was apparent to me back around then. And then we'll also go to 2015. We'll jump all the way a decade later. What is now currently being believed?
Yeah, because it was roughly the same ideals. You're slowly learning bits and pieces from 2004 to 2015, but the evolutionary leap is, again, like yesterday, 2015 to now.
Yeah. So 2015 is also 52 weeks of reefing, so you'll hear that kind of stuff right about there. Then 2020, five years ago, now sitting here today, what do we know today?
Lots.
But my favorite part, the part that I hope that some of the industry actually listens to and gets through 2 hours of,
Where are we?
I mean, I'd be really curious how long today goes.
Where are we
future.
going? Yeah.
What do we want to see from the future? How do we want to make this better going forward?
Because it's not the end. We haven't reached the apex here. There's a lot more to learn.
All right. So 2004, I actually found a video of this
years
tank
ago.
here. So I was doing okay without dosing calcium alkalinity. Don't show this video yet because this would be totally inaccurate. I'll show it to you in just a second. But I was doing okay. I just set up a tank. I was using tapper-based saltwater rock and had some pretty easy to maintain corals. And I didn't really understand calcium and alkalinity like most new reefers at the time. Now I think it's like a fundamental. You just kind of learn that right at the beginning.
Yeah.
But at the time, and everything just seemed okay, kind of without doing it. But I don't think I was the best judge, really. To be
No,
honest.
you felt success, right? Because things were growing, and tank was
I'd say most
alive.
things weren't dying.
Yeah,
is,
there you go.
The
There you go.
threshold of success. I wasn't dosing calcium alkalinity, and everything seemed okay. And honestly, others on the forums actually agreed. You don't need to dose calcium alkalinity, almost like it's a myth.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they were experiencing the same thing.
I don't know. What it is you ask a question, you tend to believe the people that
Everybody
believe the
who
same thing
agrees
that
with
you
you.
believe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was wrong, clearly. Anyway, I was learning. It's brand new. And it really wasn't explained to me that calcium and alkalinity were critical. He was more so explained like he was beneficial. Like almost like if I took my Centrum every day, I'd feel better. But I've lived a long time without Centrum.
For the average hobbyist and the level of knowledge that you were at the time, the understanding of how critical it wasn't there. The information was there though, but you'd have to read like almost scientific journal type, things about like Randy Holmes Farley articles and whatnot that were all over a lot of people's heads to figure out for yourself. As a first-time reefer?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. That was it. So I don't know if any of you guys identify with not understanding the importance or how calcium alkalinity works back then, but that was me. And eventually, though, I did figure out, like, somebody's like, calcium. If you don't dose calcium, you're gonna get screwed up. And this is about the point where one of the guys, local guys in the hobby or in the club here, like sold all of his coral frags or whatever, and I bought a whole bunch of SPS frags for this newer tank. And they sat there for, I don't remember the exact day, like 9 months, a year, or whatever, and they just had as like little 1-inch frags.
Yeah.
Most of them survived, but they certainly weren't thriving. And I don't get it. Like, who wants these little 1-inch sticks? Why I spent a fortune on these things? I didn't get it. So I was like, oh, all right, well, I'll go get some calcium. So I went to the local fish store, and I'll be curious how many, again, if you've been around for a while, had a similar experience. Somebody handed me a container of Kent Turbo Calcium. They said, yeah, dose this. This will help you with your calcium.
Yeah.
Note, they didn't tell me anything about alkalinity.
Or how to dose it, or...
And you've heard me joke about this before. Like, I brought it home, and it's like you read the back, and it says dose it every Christmas or Thursday. If you feel generous, double full moons. No, it didn't really say that. I was just joking. But like, I don't know. It just kind of said on there, use a teaspoon every week or something. And so I did that for a while, and it really didn't seem to do anything. And so it just kind of went back on the shelf, and I never used it. I don't know. However, all of this was revolutionized the day that David Grigger came to my house, right? That's the way I remember it anyway.
Yeah.
So David Grigger was one of the really helpful local club members, and he came over and explained to me how calcium and alkalinity works and why it works and what I should expect. And I don't remember which one of these came first, but it was either putting Kalkwasser in my auto top off, because I had it auto top off at the point, but if I just threw Kalkwasser in the auto top off, all of a sudden I'm adding calcium and alkalinity to the tank. Yeah. Not in like a super precise manner, but better than zero, right? He also came over and showed me DIY Randy Holmes Farley's like 2-part with baking soda and like Pella Dow or Dow Flake. I don't remember which one took off first. I wish I could remember. But this is what the tank looks like shortly after that. All right. So, pardon me, this is a super old film back from 2004. But those guys were like little 1-inch frags, and then like a year later, all of a sudden,
success.
Like, bam! All of a sudden, all these frags, man, grow out. I got clams and stuff in here. This is my first tank, man, and I'm learning this like on the fly.
Yeah,
so I'm pretty happy with this. Like, I feel pretty proud of it. Everybody comes to my house, says like, "Oh, cool," whatever. So this is where I learned, like, oh, calcium alkalinity,
it's working.
You and me forever. Yeah, I get it now. I totally understand. And so, like, it was that one-on-one, interaction that I had with David Grigger, who, and this is a really simple tank. There's no sump on it. I got a hang-on skimmer, hang-on refugium, just really, really easy. All right, so, and that is where it all changed for me. I understand now the basics of calcium alkalinity, and I went and decided to top that off.
You're going to try to source it yourself now.
Well, yeah, because he showed me you could go buy a bag of Dow Flake, man, for $50.
Big giant
or $20.
One. You'll never
50 pounds.
You'll never get through it in your lifetime.
A lifetime supply for $20. And then you go buy some baking soda, you bake it in the oven, and you never really figure out how long to bake it.
Yeah, I tried that.
I always felt like I was like contaminating with the tinfoil and stuff, but I don't know. Anyway, he also showed me the Reef Calculator. The Reef Calculator, most of you probably have grown up with the existence of the Reef Calculator and you don't know a world without it. But prior, it was read the bottle, dump it in, and then just pray it was right. And I got the right amount of test kits. All of a sudden, he's like, so, go into, I think, J. Deek's calculator. And it's, it's 390 now. I want it to be 420. I'm using this. Dose it. Test afterward. Whoa.
Yeah, it
It
worked.
worked. It's not like the magic's gone. You know, what happened to Hope and Pray?
Yeah.
It actually does exactly what it says. So that was really refreshing back in 2004.
It was your, and I don't see it on here either, but the test kits at the time were relatively reliable then. If you kind of did the calculator and it said go to here, and you kind of got into that ballpark.
If you read it, the way you read it was probably going to be the way you'd read it again the next time.
Yeah.
So anyway, we figured out that calcium chloride, street melter, and one specific type, which was Dow flake. This is actually a very interesting point because Randy Holmes Farley did a lot for our hobby, man.
Oh, yeah.
Probably more than is on a very short list of people that advanced our hobby more than him.
Yeah.
And certainly helped me. I don't know.
I read a lot of his stuff too, yeah.
So, but what he found there was that he went out and did a lot of testing. And it wasn't just like went out and like bought some street icer and like threw it in the tank and hope it went good. No, like he's a scientist.
Yeah.
And so he actually had it tested and analyzed and found out that this one brand was actually safe. Was Dow flake at the time. And then he felt like I think he might have done the pelletized version as well. And the magnesium is actually also. So it turns out that it was called mag flake. It was super hard to find, but it was this type that comes from the Dead Sea, not mined out of mines here in the United States, which has a lot of impurities in it. You don't want that stuff. And it also came from a company I would later find out actually provides a lot of magnesium to the aquarium industry, even sells like a low ammonia version to the aquarium industry. So he found the right one.
Oh, that was the key point of the Dead Sea stuff was low ammonia levels.
Yeah, low ammonia, but you also find in the North American stuff that it comes out of these mines and it's just got all kinds of garbage
nasty.
in it. You'll find that magnesium is one of the hardest things to source clean without a whole lot of purification. I would find that out later on. Anyway, all right, and so we started I think their hobby is also at this point, really largely relying on visual tests outside of that. So they're testing other stuff. You're mixing it up. Did it turn brown? Did it turn yellow? The flakies in it, whatever. But it's kind of started a revolution. Basically, when you find out, that alkalinity is baking soda.
Yes.
They turn the container on a super duper Reef Buffer Deluxe, and it says sodium bicarbonate. I buy that same thing in a box for 90 cents.
I put it in my fridge to get rid of smells. What do you mean? This is the same thing? Yeah, I bake with it.
90 cents food grade versus the pet grade one you gave me is 20 bucks.
20 bucks, yeah.
I don't know.
That's a big turning point.
Feel kind of screwed, man. The fish sticker wasn't enough. I don't. But then when you find it out and you use it, you also feel kind of like you're in the know.
Yeah.
You're in this circle now that man, I found the secret sauce.
You go to big box stores and get pounds of it for super cheap. It's the same thing?
I won't call it the same thing. Specifically, the alkalinity, you'll find that it isn't that much different. But the calcium, there's a really important distinction here that a lot of people lose because they haven't been around for the whole period of time and tested it all, is that Randy Holmes Farley went through an immense amount of work to find out that both that Dow flake and that Dead Sea mag flake were the right ones. And then it kind of deteriorated from there. The amount of effort into other brands.
Not like going and getting some driveway ice melter.
That happened years later. We'll hit it on the later. All right, but
baked baking soda.
So baked baking soda was interesting too. So we wanted to bake the carbon dioxide out of it. So we take the baking soda, bake it in the oven, lose all the carbon dioxide, and essentially turns it into soda ash or sodium carbonate. And it raises the pH of the tank, which is beneficial in a variety of ways. All right, so we found that you can just go buy, and it's not readily available at the grocery store, but you can go buy sodium carbonate.
Washing powder.
Yeah, well, and then one of the interesting ones is the community rapidly figured out you can go buy washing soda at the grocery store. It says 100% washing or sodium carbonate on the side. this is like one of the funny parts, because if you're not a scientist or any of this, you wouldn't know any better. Like, I don't know if 100% means pure to me, right? No, it means like if I gave you a puppy and I called it 100% puppy, that's what it is. True. Doesn't mean it's pure. It doesn't mean or 100% sugar. It just means it doesn't have salt in it. Yep. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have copper or impurities in the sugar. It just means that it's sugar. So, in fact, when you open it up, though, you smell it, and it smells like
detergent.
Yeah, like flowers.
Yeah. Well, that's because it's coming off of the same line.
It's washing soda.
Yeah.
So it's not that they added flour or perfume to it. It's that it's coming off the same line as the washing detergent, because that's what it's usually used for. And there's no reason to clean it in between.
Yeah, you're putting it in your washing machine.
Yeah, so they don't clean it, and that's why it smells that way. So most people wouldn't use that, just for that reason. All right, so once you knew this, though, once you knew that your calcium chloride or your calcium, buffer or whatever it is,
it was like driveway melt.
It's just calcium pellets.
You can get a 20-pound. You can get a lifetime supply for $20.
Mm-hmm. And baking soda I can buy at the grocery store for 99 cents.
Man, I feel like a dummy.
Yeah, man. Like, once you know this, who would use a commercial 2-part? You feel like a chump.
But from a reefing company or from somebody selling you reefing products.
I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
Like, A, I wouldn't use that because I feel like a chump. And 2, I don't been that I figured out the secret sauce. I feel like I'm in the know.
Yep.
I don't know. So there you are. Trace elements, also for chumps. That's what the feeling was at the time.
Back in 2000, early 2000s?
Okay, so part of that, I think, is the trace element conversation is a little harder to identify as success, and it's not like calcium and alkalinity. It's a longer term thing.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's also that snake oil feeling, right? Mm-hmm. That I have no idea what's in here. You're not telling me what's in here. I can't see like immediate results like I can with calcium and alkalinity. Mm-hmm. I put in alkalinity, I see my alkalinity go up. That's an immediate response. Trace elements? I don't know.
Yeah, fool me once, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think also once you find you're in the know, you kind of want to stay there, so of course the trace elements are for chumps. I don't know. That's the feeling a lot of us had, including myself back then, 16 years ago. All right, so trace elements come from water changes is the large opinion at the time.
Yeah.
And we'll later find out sometimes yes, sometimes no.
And it says on the buckets, some of the buckets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. At the time, ESV is really popular, so 2-part. And then when I say at the time, it's actually still really popular.
Yeah.
So this is one of those time-tested 2-parts that has spanned decades for sure. Bali method is actually competing with DIY at the time.
Yeah.
This is the Tropic Marin Bali method.
The original.
And losing, right?
Which later on will become as a surprise after we learn more. But at the time,
I don't think it was marketed well. Like, you didn't understand what it was trying to do, but it was trying to be a more complete 2-part that actually identifies the issues with the excess sodium and chloride, solves them, and makes something better. Also incorporates the trace elements and stuff, but wasn't marketed super great, and I don't know. It was competing with something much cheaper and lost. I think largely.
Well, that's a conversation to have too, though. Is that cheap or that cost? Mm-hmm. Why were we arguing over what's the cheapest approach?
Yeah, that's something that I'll come up here in just a minute, I think, too, is once we start talking about calcium 2-parts, calcium reactors, Kalkwasser, 90% of the conversation isn't about what's best for you and your desires. It always ends up in this circle of what's the cheapest. Often the cheapest might be by 15 cents a month, which is irrelevant.
Yeah, but I'm winning if I'm saving.
Yeah, I don't know, man. So but they seem to win the conversations online. The cheapest possible method.
Yeah.
And I understand if you're talking about the difference between $100 and $10. That is material. That matters, right?
Yep.
The difference between 12 and 11, there's other things that also matter.
You can defend that position so hard.
Yeah, okay. So at the time, dosing pumps are unbelievably hard to come by. You probably don't remember what the one was available.
Nope.
Okay, it's a SpectraPure liter meter 3.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Okay, and the first pump of it had like a aircraft machined head on it or something, and it was like $400, and like the extra dosing heads for 2 is another $250. You're into this thing for $650 just for 2 dosing heads. Like this is unobtainable to most people at the time to like try to just automate 2 parts.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We came out with a couple options. It was actually funny. We got the APT one, which is Drew's doser. That guy could never keep up. No matter how many he made, man, like he'd send me like 8 or 16. And like,
I'll buy a container.
Larry, man, I'll pay you up front. You can buy all the parts you need to do. You can do whatever, hire some more people, whatever. But I need these by the hundreds. Charge me more. Do whatever you want to do, man, because the difference here is between $60 and $600. Charge me 80, man. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then actually, when I was at a convention in Europe about drinking water, I go to this guy, what is now the BRS doser, and he's like, "Yeah, man, these are like I thought he said like 170 euros," and I'm like, "Oh, that's like a lot,
spendy,
man."
yeah.
And then like does the like I totally misheard him, man. It was like 45 euros or something.
Yeah.
When I finally heard, I'm like, "Oh, sign me up, man! Send as many as you can." I don't know. So dosing pumps are super hard to come by, and the one that was out there also that was affordable was the Aquatic one, which gave dosing pumps a terrible name because it back siphoned.
Oh, it wasn't peristaltic. Was it peristaltic? But
peristaltic, but the like head in the middle didn't pin down, and so what it would do is over time it'd start to wobble and then not pinch it off, and then your 2-part would siphon back out the wrong way. So gave dosing pumps a bad name for a while, and then especially 2-headed dosing pumps gave a bad name too for a while. All right. So, again, much of this, again, was about cost now. Calcium reactor for me.
Yeah, at the time?
Back then? At the time, man, like, you want me to invest in this CO2 canister, a pH controller, like stuff like the Apex doesn't even exist at the time.
The discussions on the threads were cross-eyed and trying to how to dial this thing in and adjust it and fix it and that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it was for a new reefer, unobtainable for me. It wasn't something I was going to go after. But if you saw people discuss it, it was like, all right, well, if you could hold on to your calcium reactor for X amount of years, you had this much demand, it would pay off here. Yeah. And it's funny because basically a lot of it's just like trying to justify the cost.
Yeah.
The part that like is the catch-22 here is none of the stuff on the calcium reactor is going to last for eternity.
So you're going to have to replace it.
Yeah, you're going to have to replace the regulator, all this other stuff. So if you start adding in the pH probes and all the other stuff that breaks on it over time, I don't know. It's not the reason. There's good reasons to do it, but that isn't one of them in many cases. If you have a monster tank, then probably. All right. This is actually, so here yesterday you heard me talk a lot about like with nutrients, people bickering each other with the forums, they're not real polite with each other. This is actually one of the areas with calcium and alkalinity, you really don't see that as much because the science is pretty sound. So people are sharing their opinions on like what's best for them, but it was pretty clear what works and doesn't work. How much you pay for it and other elements like that are different. But
different conversation.
Yeah. And when there's extremes, so the extreme end of the DIY crowd is basically telling everybody
get it as cheap as you possible.
Yeah, if you're an idiot if you buy anything other than like not just a bag of Dow Flake, but you had to get it from the central distributor and pay $17 instead of $20. And then on the other end, you have these like guys with infinite wallets who are looking at it like, you want me to take street de-icer and throw it into my $10,000 aquarium to save $5 a month? You've got to be high.
Yeah.
So the answer usually is somewhere in between. And I will tell you, I look back in it, and it is. It's somewhere in between those 2 points. And this is the last one. For 2004, way back then, I trust my test kits.
Oh, yeah.
I trust them. I think they're right. I'm wrong.
You're wrong?
No.
Oh, you trust them like without fault?
Yeah, no, I trust it like it's going to be some kind of lab grade test that when it says 420, it's 420.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, and you'll defend it. You'll die defending it.
Yeah, and then when I test it against the other one, no, the one I've been using for a while is right. The other one must be wrong. And then I later learn that's all garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, so let's fast forward now 10 years. It's now 2015. It's about the time that we are launching the 52 Weeks of Reefing. Randy, you work here now?
Yep.
Yep. And we got a whole slew of reefers here. I've talked to 8 million people since then. This isn't my first rodeo anymore. I got a decade of reef tanks behind me.
Yeah.
I got all the resources. I talked to a lot of mentors differently. And I know something different than I knew 10 years before. So what happens during that period of 10 years? So the first one is
Test kits. The one we just left on. They're not as accurate as you would hope so. They're not as accurate as you would think. And actually, we're okay with starting to think about them as ballpark tools.
So here's the thing, man. If you watched us do some of our testing, you'll find out that not only are they, you don't know if they're accurate, but if you get 5 people to do it, they're all going to read the endpoint different. They're all going to perform it different. They're all...
the results are going to be shotgun blast across the board. Could be anywhere.
Age of reagents are different between the one in my house and your house. And so the goal here is just to be close and consistent. So you see still in 2015, people arguing about which test kit is the best, and whether or not this one, can I use this one to test the other one, and all that stuff. It's just not true, though. Like, don't think of it as that. The thing only cost $15. You know, it wasn't a $150 lab kit.
After it's passed through 2-3 hands.
Yeah, 2-3 hands. And so it just has reasonable expectations for it. And I don't say that because it's frustrating to hear that.
Yeah.
I say it because it's real, and I say it that once you know it's real, you can just let go of that desire for perfection because it's not going to happen.
Not without a lot of money.
And then you can also realize that I don't need it to be perfect. I just need to keep it in a safe window and consistent there, and it'll produce the desired result.
Yep.
All right. So that's 2015. The start of it is, learn how to use the tools that you have.
But there's some that stand out too.
No, there are. Yes, there are
a few that stood out.
So I also find out that between 2004 and 15, alkalinity is more important than calcium. And I don't know why, for all those years, people said you needed to dose calcium. Alkalinity is by far more important.
7 times more readily available than the water than calcium. Which fluctuates the fastest. It changes the fastest. Like, it's an easier canary for what's going on in your tank.
Yeah, and it's not that calcium is important. They're both important because they're making calcium carbonate.
Right.
But it's that, like Randy said, there's 7 times less of it in the tank. So when you pull some out, it drops the availability of it drops much faster. And it's closely connected to the pH and the buffer system of your tank. So when it drops, it affects all kinds of other things. The acidity of the water. Yeah. So alkalinity, more important.
Far more important.
2015. Now know that.
Test it daily.
All right. Calcium chloride is not calcium chloride, I learned at this point in time.
Is this for the start of the testing the additives?
Okay, so between here and there, so those of you who don't know, I'll just super brief. You started bulk resupply. What we did is we had a source for a Dow flake here in Minneapolis, and we also had a source for the special Dead Sea mag flake that everybody in the nation was looking for. So hey man, why don't we sell them little buckets, you know? And so we did, and thank God that all of you guys bought it. Thank you. But we're just trying to make it available because that stuff wasn't available in summer states. It wasn't available in winter states when it wasn't winter. And we just had to have a national distributor here in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and about the only way you could actually get some of the stuff that you were looking for, the product, the material that you're looking for, comes in such big bulk prices or sizes that you're never going to use it all. I'm not going to buy that if I'm not ever going to use it.
So what happened though is during that period of time, Dow Flake changes their formulation. And by changing their formulation, they just stopped selling bromide products. And where they got their bromide is from the calcium carbonate mines, or calcium chloride, where they got all the calcium chloride. So they would take the bromide out of it as an impurity.
Yeah.
Well, when they didn't want to sell the bromide anymore, they just left it in because it didn't matter. It was getting thrown in the street.
Yeah.
And so like it was no longer suitable for the application. So Andrew and I called up every single place in the nation and said, if it has this lot number, I want it. And I bought it all. So we got all of the safe stuff in here so we could start hunting down the next solution.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So I got to tell you, we went through hundreds of them. All of them. I was pulling them from all over the planet. And most of them, you mix them up with water and they're just dirt. It's just brown. I'd later find out that the brown in the calcium chloride, if you talk to the manufacturers, they'll tell you this, it's industrial grade, man. So the machinery that's on the line to package it has rust on it.
But they don't care. Why would you care?
You're throwing it on the street.
Yeah,
so,
why do you care so much?
So if it turns kind of reddish when you mix it up, you may not even see it, but if you mix it up next to a clear glass of water, you'll see like this is pink.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Like we went through tons and tons and tons of it. And actually where we ended up getting it from, because I was dissatisfied with the vast majority of the affordable sources, is Michael DePreti over at, what is the name of that salt company? Somebody out there probably knows. Aquacraft, right?
Oh, wow.
So for a little while he was sourcing it for us, and then eventually we found our pharmaceutical grade material, like probably a year later, and that was the evolution of that. But what I found along that way is calcium chloride is not calcium chloride is not calcium chloride.
Yeah.
And thank you, Randy Holmes Farley, for spending the effort to find the safe one. But
when that well ran dry.
Yeah, the well ran dry was kind of an issue. We also found that washing soda and soda ash and USP sodium carbonate are not the same as well. And it was around that time where we decided to move over to the pharma. And the last piece of the puzzle was actually sodium carbonate. It was a tech grade prior to that.
Yeah.
It was like the best of the ones we had available in the United States. And then we went over to Europe now, and they used a USP grade over there. And so we import that. And one of the things there too is like if you wanted to go get tech grade soda ash here, go find a big old bag. I want to provide something, not readily available, something of value to the community. So if you want to use something that doesn't mix up with the sudsy
dirty
organics on it,
browns,
and is clear and has the same standards as all the other stuff you're using, I want to provide that. And so through the help of all your guys' support, we were able to start shipping in containers of that stuff, and thank God everybody wanted it for the same reason we wanted to provide it. I also learned along the way there in 2015, there's no such thing as pet grade, right?
Oh.
Pet grade doesn't exist.
It's not made for that purpose.
I don't know.
It's made for, it's like, what, human consumption or tech?
There's like a handful of different grades for different applications.
Yeah.
But in my mind, when I was, just as a reefer, it's got a picture of a fish on it. There must have been something really special that was selected for this purpose. And the reality is there was, in many cases. It was the cheapest available thing.
Marketing ploy type.
Well, it has
slap
to go
a
through
fish on it
four levels of distribution. So now I know what the stuff costs. There's no way it can do that and not be a really, really expensive product. I don't know. There's no pet grade out there, and so you're just kind of at the mercy of you need to pick a brand, I guess, that you trust, has earned your trust in the way that they behave themselves in the market, because there isn't a grade on the bucket, and you're just believing they have your best interests at heart.
So then that led to the big test.
Okay, so this is actually a lot of information about just calcium chloride, but and the variances from the DIY end to the other end.
Right.
But this is the stuff that I've learned. So you guys kind of get to see it over the course of a decade. And I jumped in, dove in all the way to the Dow Flake, and then you find your way to the other end. And so finally, I've looked at the stuff, I've seen it dirty brown, I've seen the rust, I've talked to the manufacturers who mine this stuff, and I now know what it is and why it's there. So let's now, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but we sent in all the stuff for ICP MS testing.
$20,000 test on 5 or 6 different spectrums.
Yeah, so we had like 2 retail products, the BRS bulk, another bulk, and then like we went and bought like
off the grocery store shelf.
It was an alkalinity, a calcium hydroxide, like a
calcium chloride and magnesium.
Yeah, so we had all of them covered, and what we found is the most expensive retail one was the worst of all the aquarium label stuff, which is super disheartening.
Yeah, the most expensive one sold specifically to our hobby turned out to be the worst.
Yeah, the other bulk options.
I think the biggest part of that test is, for me, was seeing it visually in settling cones. And the amount of stuff at the bottom of each settling cone, and like, oh, this is sold to you for the industry, like as a product that you're supposed to use in your tank. This is off the shelf, this is driveway ice melt, this is pickling lime, and then there's the pharma stuff. And it's just, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Well, so then you got the data now to support it. Like, not like we always joke, you can't see trace elements. So if you can see with the naked eye,
mix up trace. Brown, it's not trace.
I don't know. So particularly the Kalkwasser was really, calcium hydroxide, really eye-opening.
Really eye-opening.
And so that stuff is just like largely mined and processed as a raw material, whereas the pharma stuff is actually designed predominantly for baby formula. Totally different standard.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, so I learned, man, a lot how the chemical is in a chemical is in a chemical. There's different standards on how they're produced, and there's a different quality and reliability. One of the things I actually learned is the cheap way to do this, and actually they were doing this in Europe for a while, is the cheapest way to find some things is like build a standard and then go find a mine that meets that standard, rather than purifying it to that standard.
Yeah.
The problem is you get these pockets of impurities that don't get caught. And so they don't actually allow that for many chemicals in Europe anymore, and I don't think they allow that here or ever did. So now the way it works now is you actually have to purify the chemical to that standard. You can't just like go find veins that are relatively pure and still have it meet that grade.
Yeah.
You can have it most of the time meet that standard, like isn't USP, but like shares the same standard, like really vague terminology like that. I don't know. All right, so we learned all of that. I think we also learned, this is an interesting one. This one's really hard to stomach, actually.
The 39 or 38?
38. This one, man, I plead with people to listen to over the years, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But, and I'm guilty of this as the next person, especially early on, is I dosed this to my tank and everything seemed okay, it must be safe.
Yeah, that's that mentality of if it's not happening immediately, there's nothing wrong. Like if it's not if I'm dosing something to my tank, mixed up dirty brown, I'm okay with it, or I'm just not concerned about the quality of what I'm dosing my tank, and my fish don't jump out because it's toxic, then it's pretty good. Yeah,
so the difference that you're missing here is the difference between 1 dose and 1,000 doses over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So 1 dose of something is different than 1,000. So you just got to kind of be aware of that. All right, anyway, so enough talk about the variances, because honestly this sounds like really self-serving because we sell what I believe to be the best stuff out there. But let's get into the actual calcium stuff. Well, I'm done with all that stuff.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, man, is what I also learned is Kalkwasser is just not popular, but I don't get why.
Yeah. I remember you were telling me, because my natural progression, my thought process when I first came in the hobby was, all right, so you want to grow corals, you want to start, supplementing your tank. You start with Kalkwasser. That only takes you so far because there's a saturation level. And then you go to 2-part, and that only takes you so far. And then you go to calcium reactor. Like for some reason that was drilled into my brain that was a progression, and you can quickly outgrow Kalkwasser. But it's not true.
You can take some tanks really, really far with Kalkwasser, and Kalkwasser raises the pH. It's a 1-part additive that's inherently balanced.
Simple.
Like one of the easiest ways is just dump some in your auto top off. As a new reefer, I can tell you that it worked.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it's the least expensive.
It is the least expensive.
So I don't know
Why is it not popular?
why this isn't more widely used. And I think part of it is like I see when I ask this question, I see a lot of disinformation, you know. But the way it works is calcium hydroxide ionizes in the water, calcium pops off, hydroxide attaches to the carbon dioxide, forms carbonate, and like you've now added calcium and carbonate and reduced carbon dioxide from the tank. 3 things that are all very valuable.
Yeah.
Right? There's no sodium left. There's no chloride left over. Salinity isn't changing. So I'm not going to bother trying to change the world, but I am actually kind of shocked at this point.
Reconsider Kalkwasser.
Yeah, the Kalkwasser isn't more popular because it should be.
Nothing to do with its max potency. It can take you a lot farther than that.
It'll take you a lot farther than you think. All right. At the time, 2015. Most of the community thinks that calcium reactors add trace elements.
I thought the same thing too.
Me too, right? You're melting
Hey, it's
calcium.
coral skeleton. That's natural. Isn't there trace elements in that stuff too?
Yeah, some is.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, you find out though a lot of those trace elements are actually used by the animal in its tissue to regulate metabolic processes, you know, the molybdenum, the iron, the zinc, the manganese, and all that kind of stuff.
Didn't get sucked into the skeleton.
It's being used by the zooxanthellae. It's being in the, you know, tissue of the coral, the live animal. Isn't in any great degree in its skeleton. And, you know, people have debated that for a while, and it's still, I can't tell you this is like a definitive test, but what we did is ran the calcium reactor at its top strength that we could get it.
Max potency.
And then we sent off an ICP report, the difference between that and just the salt water that was being fed to it.
Yep.
And we found that definitely it adds strontium, and it definitely adds phosphate.
Definitely, that's for all the medias have phosphate.
But like most of the other ones are largely the same.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I won't say that's 100% definitive, but if you ask me what I believe now, is it adds some, but it's not a real solution for trace elements.
Trace elements, yeah.
And I guess that is just a belief, really.
So even back then, 2015, these calcium reactors were a thing that was a little not over your. It wasn't over your head, but you're just not using it.
Okay, so we strongly debated putting a calcium reactor and 52 weeks of reefing on this tank. And you guys actually voted it off the island, thank God, actually, at the time.
But back then, the conversation with the calcium reactor, and this is probably what drew me to it because of how complicated it was. I like the challenge. I'm a gear nerd, gear junkie. I like that it has regulators and knobs and twisties and all this other stuff. So I adopted it because it was exciting. I get it. You mean I get a hospital grade dosing pump for this thing? I get all this, and I get to show it off to people. Like, check out my calcium reactor, man. It's really cool. But the way to tune it was, adjust this, adjust bubble count, adjust pH, adjust effluent flow, and so confusing to dial in.
All right, so right now, man, as a true gear junkie, I'm getting the shakes. Just hearing you talk about it, I want one. But here's the thing, is I want that, but I know internally me.
Yeah.
6 months from now, I don't actually want to monkey with it. I want to learn how to use it. I like the excitement of it, but I don't actually want to go check on it every 2 months and may do the matrix. Which the matrix actually turns out to be garbage. There's a way better way to do it. You'll hear that later as well. But at the time, man, it's this matrix of if I up the flow rate, then the carbon dioxide level goes down, the pH goes down. So I got to update the carbon dioxide. But if I up the carbon dioxide, man, and there's just all these different things are changing.
Eyes crossed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it ends up kind of being like one of these things where you just become a pro and you kind of get a feel for it. I don't know, because the people who've been doing it for years will tell you it's easy.
Yeah.
But you had to. That's kind of like more of an end
massive
point than a starting
curve.
point.
Yeah.
All right. So also still 2015. Personally on the fence about trace elements. I'm starting to learn that some of the things I thought were true maybe weren't, and I'm a little I'm still kind of gun shy.
Still got that snake oil burned you feeling in the back of your brain.
I can still have snake oil scars on me. I don't know. I don't know. I had 2 big issues that really rung true for me at this point.
Yeah.
One is a lot of people from the club really installed this in my head, which is don't dose what you can't test for.
I still see that repeated kind of to the day.
I especially believe that about the trace element all-in-ones. Like
Yeah.
you want to dose trace elements and you dump them in, and if my iron's low, then I'm just going to dump in everything else along with it. I don't know. It feels so wrong. I don't know. So there's that, and then there's also, are the benefits realistic? So
Measurable.
Measurable?
Yeah.
Am I going to find them? Is this still somebody just trying to sell me something?
And the only way to find out would be to set up identical systems and do this and do. There's so many variables in it. Like you just kind of have to take a
so the
blind.
real thing isn't that, because you won't find anything definitive from that. I now know this. It's set up at least 2 of this and at least 2 of that. Better 3.
Yeah.
And have 6 tanks up to find the answer to this
results.
question. Like nobody does that.
Yeah.
You know, of all the exact same corals, and you've maintained all the parameters the same in all of them.
And there's so many different trace element options out there. Like, how do you know which one to hit?
Yeah, and if it did, all you'd find out is this one does or doesn't work. You wouldn't know about all the rest.
Yeah. So you have to run the test again.
I don't know, man. It's hard. So, however, at the time, there's also way more dosing pumps in the market, thank God. So all the manufacturers have brought dosing pumps out.
Yep.
Thank you very, very much in 2015. ICP testing is now a thing.
There you go.
I don't know if it's 2016, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was pretty close. Yeah, 16, 17 is about when we started down that path, I think. But I do have, it's kind of like a blessing and a curse, double-edged sword here on this one. I now have a way to test all of these elements that I've never been able to test before, other than maybe like lead elements for certain, different mixtures of trace elements. But the double-edged sword is, now you got me wanting to play Mad Scientist, and you've made them available to me to play Mad Scientist, and I'm going to defend the results of my ICP test because it's testing it's in a laboratory. It's testing far beyond any test kit that I can do at home. Now I'm going to go to the grave with its results.
This is where all of you guys saw me dive headfirst into Triton, because it can prove it works. And so the snake oil salesman that is hit me is like, I don't know, like everybody says mine's the greatest, everyone's all complete, contains all elements known to man, all the beneficial ones, blah, blah, blah. And every time cringe to it. This one, the Triton one, makes those same claims, but then provides a test kit that actually proves that it does that or doesn't do it, and then allows you to correct it individually or gives you directions on how to correct it. To me, this was accountability to the claims that I made, and the opposite of snake oil.
Yeah, well, and the thought process was logical too, in that, okay, so you're telling me the approach, and I think that was kind of the pitch when it was first out, was if you're telling me that I can take care of nitrates and I can take care of phosphates with a refugium, I can take care of major elements, calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium, I can take care of trace elements, so all that's left is I don't have to, water changes are not really doing anything anymore because we're slightly believed that water changes were kind of like the trace element thing, but you've included them in the solution. But I'm less reliant on water changes. That thought process made this even more believable too, and believable in trace elements.
Let's dumb it down farther than that. Actually, so there's the whole Triton method and all the water change garbage and all that other stuff. But at the heart of it, it's just a 4-part. Like any other calcium and alkalinity you have, it says it has trace elements.
Yeah.
The difference is unlike, or just like all of them, it says it's the best and manages all the stuff perfectly. This one now, for the first time, actually gives you a window on whether or not it's actually doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know, it spoke to me because it solved this problem that I had for a decade. And every actually great manufacturer and product out there, they don't develop something that they thought was great for themselves. They saw something out in the marketplace, they saw a problem out there, and they solved it. And I think in this case, you can make up your own mind to whether or not they really solved it or not, but it was definitely a big problem in the marketplace of all of the stuff, all of it says they're perfect, and they all do it totally different. It cannot be true for all of them.
Yeah, true.
All different price points, all kinds of different stuff. So it spoke to me. I also like the fact that Triton was for refugiums at the time. It had a special use. They actually formulated specific to that, so they recognize you have a refugium. So let's add the iron, the molybdenum, and other things that are going to be consumed in that type of environment. I don't know. So that was 2015. It was kind of a new, neat entry. And I think if you were around for 2015, everybody was talking about Triton one way or another. Love it, hate it, whatever. True. It was an interesting conversation. All right. So end of all of that is trace elements are just a gamble based on beliefs and priorities.
Take a blind step off of that ledge and decide for yourself whether or not you believe it and whether or not you're going to do it.
And I say that it will be that way tomorrow, and it will be that way 10 years from now. And I say that because, like, to this day, we don't know the true effects of all of the
what is this single
magnesium, like depletion in Randy, or my dog, or my bird.
I don't know.
Like, there's way more money in those areas than there is in reef tanks, and so it just won't ever happen. You know, and we're never going to find out for sure the answer to that equation. So you're just going to have to take a leap of faith one way or the other and make a cost analysis. So, like, if the thing is going to cost you an extra $1,000 a year, you better have a way of believing that it's actually going to do something or measuring it. If it's going to cost you an extra $10 a year, all you need is belief. At that point, man, it needs to make sense and work. So, all right. So at that point in time, you're also starting to see in 2015 a whole bunch of, even though the balling method has caught on huge in Europe, hasn't really caught on in the United States all that well. But you're seeing all these copies.
Copycats. It's the A and the B and the little bit of C, and then now I've got a full complete system. And
so there's like no shortage of probably a half dozen different copies of the balling method at this point, all trying to approach it.
They were doing it back in 2004.
It was kind of interesting, and a lot of them were European copies, so it made sense because it was so big over there and followed so well over there. But they made their way over here. At this point, we're doing a calcium level of 420. Alkalinity, who knows? Nobody's has decided at this point what is the right alkalinity. Some people are arguing, natural seawater's level of 7 is perfect. Red Sea Coral Pro bucket is like 11. This stuff is like all over the place. I don't know. Magnesium, most people are around 1280.
Yeah, and I think we might have missed that one in the last.
Okay, we did.
In the last one, but in 2004, roughly the same thought process. Around 420 for calcium, alkalinity, still don't know. And magnesium about.
I'm going to hone in today. I'll give you the exact alkalinity level, but like at this point,
in 2015, we still don't know. Undecided. You're all over the place.
We're also at this point, 2015. My personal belief is that chasing pH is more likely to mess up your tank than help it. It's not worth the effort. Don't bother with pH. Throw your probe away. Stop caring about it.
I do remember that.
Maybe I'm going too far with throw the probe away because you actually can find issues that way. But I was wrong. I'm going to tell you, I was wrong on that front. And the reason that I said that though is because
people were trying to chase the pH dragon, peg it to something, do everything under their power to try to change it, and including dosing stuff.
Yeah, 90% of the people trying to fix their pH were using things called pH buffers, which is just an alkalinity buffer. It's basically dosing the 2-part without the other part, without the calcium part.
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, or they were loading up their tank full of an obnoxious amount of boron or borate, and is actually messing up the chemistry of the tank more than you're helping. Now that the entire hobby has really grasped the fact that as long as your alkalinity is on point or maintained well, it's almost certainly carbon dioxide in the room. The carbon dioxide in the room creates carbonic acid in the tank. If we can reduce the carbon dioxide in the room, it reduces the carbonic acid in the tank. So now that we've known that, and we did know that then, but it wasn't really drained into our souls. And now most of the community has adopted that 90+% of the pH issues are related to carbon dioxide in your home, not in the tank, but in your home, and then it gets in the tank. Well, we can solve the carbon dioxide thing in ways that, without dumping in buffer. So I don't know. That was wrong in 2015. It is worth solving. it just isn't if you're just going to play mad scientist with buffer.
Yeah. So we started playing, well, that's about the time we started playing with like that scrubber on the 160 and things like that. And that's when we found this next one, which is increasing pH. When we put the scrubber on the 160 and we put a solenoid on there to peg it, keep it like at 8.3 as best we could, funny thing happened. Our alkalinity started to decline, like fast, within days.
The dose correction meant we had to increase the dose like 50%.
Which means something's happened. It's going somewhere, and it's not precipitating anywhere. Where is it going?
Yeah, so then right after that, we'd find out that increasing the photo period increases alkalinity consumption. Whoa, so we increase the pH, and all of a sudden we're growing coral faster, and we're measured by how much alkalinity is consumed. It isn't, well, I could go through a long history later on, but it wasn't precipitation.
Right.
And then the light thing, the same thing. Well, lo and behold, if I go from 8 hours to 10, I can increase the amount of energy given the coral by 20%, and my dose goes up 20%.
Interesting.
Whoa. Yeah, and so we learned that at that point in time, that alkalinity is like one of, like, at the time I felt like it was, a pulse on, if you're doing things good or things bad. Later on, I'd tell you, it's probably the #1 best indicator of any change that you do to your tank, whether your corals like it or hate it.
Yep.
So, alkalinity consumption, watch it. All right, that's 2015. All right, in the history books, it's behind us. For those of you that don't know, hey, when we're on pace here, like we're only an hour into this.
We got 2 pages left.
Yeah, I don't know. We might beat 2 hours today.
There you go.
All right, so
here's where we are today.
2020, right?
This is like only a 5-year difference. The first was a 10-year difference. Now it's a 5-year difference. What have we learned in 5 years?
Okay, and this is what we know today. I can tell you with great degree of confidence that it's either straight up fact, or I believe this wholeheartedly to the point that I would tell you this in that degree of confidence. And then right after that, where we'd like to see the future go.
And your million-dollar idea.
5 years, 2025, where would we like to see the future of the hobby in terms of calcium alkalinity? All right, so starting in 2020, right around this year anyway, we've honed in on some of the best test kits. Yeah, so not just garbage, which ones are the best?
We tested it. Like, we found a way to put some test kits to the test, and come to find out, the testing, all the things we found, the testing procedures, the way you perceive the endpoints. We had 5 people go through all of the test kits that we had available for alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, and found that we all tested differently, but there are some standouts. So we came up with the best of.
Yeah, so we weren't testing for accuracy per se, because there's no standard there. It's actually really kind of difficult to do that in some ways, because like you can make up a sodium chloride thing and then dose it with calcium, but it's hard to make artificial seawater with all the interferences and have this exact level of calcium. That's actually really hard to do accurately.
So it's more on consistency, and that's where the mindset of these test kits come from, is starting to evolve too. And like it doesn't matter how accurate they are, but if I personally, Randy, test the same procedure every single time and make adjustments based off of that procedure and the results I get, can really start to trust my results.
So end of the story, you should watch those videos, actually you could probably just listen to this. Here's the deal, is we liked the Red Sea calcium test kit the best. For magnesium, it was the Aquaforest one, and then for the alkalinity, the Hanna checker, and I think right behind that was the Sallyford alkalinity test kit. And so that was a balance though of consistency, how close the 5 different people read the similar ease of use and cost, all in there. But if you're asking which ones, no one brand made it the best. And I have them at home now. I brought those 3 home based on those experiences.
Yeah, I used to be brand specific in all my test kits. Like I'd choose one and all of them in that brand, or another brand and all of them in that brand. Never mix and match them. But now I have a reason to mix and match them.
Like brand loyalty, no. Like some of these were just better than other ones.
Yep.
So Red Sea Calcium, Aquaforest Magnesium, and Salford, the Hannah Checker for alkalinity.
That's what we'd use.
All right. So then right after that came automated testing with the Trident and similar, like Aquatronica and stuff like that. So you know what? This is the Trident. Like, this is kind of where that piece I just talked about with, if I know my alkalinity and I can see it charted out, and I don't actually have to do the test every single day and write it down. And then I can put notes in, like I changed my lights, I did this thing, I come back to it in a week, and I can see that my alkalinity dropped then. It means that it's consuming more. No, it did like it.
Oh, yeah. If it dropped, yep.
So if my alkalinity, if I did change the lights and the alkalinity started to rise in the tank, that means it's consuming less. It means the tank didn't like it, right? So almost anything.
There's so much opportunity here for us to figure the slightest tweaks. You know, a slight tweak to your lights, a slight tweak to your flow, to your dosing. This is now a measurement tool that I can use as much as I would use my pH probe, as much as I would use my temperature probe, my ORP, and all of these other things. I now get a window multiple times a day.
So, like, it doesn't matter if you're using a Trident or Aquatronica or
all the same.
Alkatronic, rather. If you're using any of those things, it doesn't matter. Like, use the one that you think is best for you.
Alkalinity is the most important, we said, and you have tools to test it multiple times a day.
If you give me the option, I'll take calcium and magnesium as well. I'm not really as concerned about those things dropping and falling on a daily level. I guess it catches overdosing, if something happened like that. But alkalinity, this is the best pulse on the health of your tank, as well as the changes in your tank, the health of the coral. It's like almost like measuring, like, when your dog stops eating, something's wrong.
It's a measurement of his health.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I came up with this one on the fly right now. It's actually that. And like, if the coral stops consuming the calcium and alkalinity, or the alkalinity in this case, because it's easier to measure.
It's a measurement of their health.
It is a measurement of the coral's health, or irritant in the water, or that it's happy or unhappy, is absolutely not probably. I'm gonna go all the way. This is the best, other than your eyes. This is the best indication of the coral's health, and actually, unless you're a super pro, it is better than your eyes, right?
Yeah, you have to be really in tune with your tank.
Yeah, to know calcium and be able to catch it the day that it happened.
That's
the day that something bad, not killed it, not like took its health from 10 to 2.
Change the trend.
Took its health from 10 to 6.8.
Hard.
You would never see that with your eyes. Never.
Most of us wait until the verge of death. We see it from 10 to 1.
Anyway, so 2020, now there's a way to monitor calcium, alkalinity, magnesium in a totally different manner, and it actually ups the game in a totally different way. Right? All right. So, so the same thing. Health and trajectory can be closely monitored with daily alkalinity.
All right. We landed on some parameters here in 2020.
Yeah, so part of this came from the Worldwide Corals guys, and I just kind of reaffirmed this kind of mentality over time as well. It might be slightly different than what they said, but calcium, 440, alkalinity, 9, magnesium, 1350. If you don't like those numbers, raise your hand and tell me I'm totally wrong.
I'm okay with it.
I can't wait to hear all of it. This is the reason why I'm going to say those numbers, and why I'm going to tell you you're wrong if you disagree.
Okay.
I never say that kind of stuff. This is why. It's because if you go look at the tests that you and I and the other 3 guys performed, when we did like a calcium test, there was like some of the best ones, 60 to 80 points in difference in the way that you read it, and I read it, and Aaron and Josh read it, and Dave read it. And even within the consistency of performing the test, there was also, like in the magnesium one, hundreds of points.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And alkalinity too. Okay, so now I know that each person reads the endpoint this different. I know that they're performing it different. They're not, when it says 1 minute, very few people are saying, hey Siri, give me a minute.
Yeah.
You know? They're like, oh, it feels like a minute. You know? And like, they're reading the endpoint of when it turns kind of red. Is that purple, red, pink? I don't know.
Yeah. So just in the even just in the performance of the test, there's a range of fluctuation.
Yes.
And then in the test kits themselves, they have a range of fluctuation. Accuracy. It could be 10%.
Yeah, 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but if it's calcium, that's a difference between 40 points, one or the other, 380 or 360, right?
So why not pick a range in the middle?
So I say this a lot, but if you can acknowledge the inevitable and deal with it, you'll probably have the right results. If you ignore the inevitable, there's an inevitable result with that as well.
Yeah.
And so here's a couple pieces. It's inevitable that the test kit is going to be somewhat inaccurate. It's inevitable that most of us are not going to read it perfectly. And over time, you're going to let your 2-part jugs run dry. Like, there will be times where you're not dosing the way you're supposed to be. The dosing tube gets stuck and won't dose anymore.
There's a laundry list.
And it will take you days to figure it out, if not longer.
Yes.
I guess that's the case for the magnesium and calcium and the Trident, actually.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't know.
It'll catch when you stopped dosing.
If the
those
dosing
things.
pump, like they get pinched off and stuck together, if it stopped dosing calcium, I mean, I wouldn't know until I tested.
Yeah.
Right. So this will give me a buffer, though. So this will give me that buffer to tell me, you know, at least with alkalinity, most people have a pH probe. So when it got like really far down, it would trigger something.
Right.
So that's the answer here. Is at calcium at 440, I feel like 380 is a danger point. And I say that because most of the scientific community believes that you're going to impact the health of the coral below 380. I also believe above 500 is probably a danger point. I don't have any reason to say that. There's no scientific data that says where the max limit of calcium is toxic. But the further you get from natural seawater, 420, the worse, right?
But now you have a range. Now you have a range for error and a range for me just messing up because I'm going to mess up.
Yeah, I mean, Red Sea bucket is 465 right out of the bucket, and I've maintained tanks at 500 as experiments, and then like actually did well. So I know if I shoot for 440 in calcium, I can go all the way up to 500, and I can go all the way down to 380. And the tank isn't going to have a terrible, terrible reaction to that. And that is why I'm dealing with the inevitable. And if anybody out there says, I know the perfect level, I'd ask you to share the proof as to where that is and how you know you actually have it. Because I question that as well. All right, same thing with alkalinity.
Same thing with alkalinity.
This one's actually even more important because I find that at 7, a lot of people have success at 7, and a lot of people have like terrible, terrible results. That's the same thing. Like if
you're riding the line.
If I'm at 7 and all of a sudden it's actually running, you know, a 1.5 lower than that because of my testing error, and it's really 5. Yeah, it's really low.
That's really low.
Yeah, and so if I'm at shooting for 9 and I miss it by 1.5 because of my testing error or the accuracy of my test kit or the dosing pump stops working, and
so be it.
It drops to 7.5, I actually know I'm still good.
Yeah.
And so that is why 9. I'm looking for a way to address not the perfect number, but a number that is safe and stable long term, right? And then magnesium is 1350. I might actually say it's possible I'd go higher on this one, but like I think 1350 is a good number. The reason that magnesium still,
that seems a little, because in 5 years prior and in 2004 era, you were sitting that's higher than the 1280 that most people were agreeing
70
to.
points higher.
Yeah.
But if you go look at our the way that we read all those test kits between the different people blindly on a whole bunch of them,
hundreds of points.
Yeah, 300-point difference.
Yep.
So like a 70-point difference from natural seawater. Let's just go a little higher than that because nobody has seen any. This is one of those things with magnesium. Very few people believe that going a little low is actually going to be so deficient that it would hurt. I mean, it's 3 times as much of this in the water as calcium, and it's definitely not used like calcium is.
Right.
And also, people have used way higher levels, as much as 2,000 to like eradicate Bryopsis and stuff. And so just a little bit more to account for testing error. And also because you're elevating your calcium and alkalinity a little bit, having the extra magnesium in there will hopefully prevent some of the precipitation, at least fight it back a little bit.
Those are the numbers.
Those are the reasons. Calcium 440, alkalinity 9, magnesium 1350. You don't have to follow that. That's what I'm going to do. And if you have a different mentality, hopefully you have a good reason behind it.
Yeah, please
and
share
it's right
that
for
too.
you.
That'd be great.
That's the reason for me.
Yep.
All right, 2020. This one's going to be tough to hear. All right.
I like this one.
Trace elements matter. End of story. You can stop talking about it right now. The trace elements absolutely matter. Anybody who says anything different than that doesn't understand the biology of animals and how minerals regulate metabolic function within the animal to create energy and tissue.
If you feed me two things and two things only that were straight up one element each, I'm going to be deficient.
It's true. And so iron, molybdenum, zinc, copper, all these things play a role in how an animal metabolites or regulates metabolic function. And so it's just true. So the question is, at what point can it fall to where it's actually going to be negative? And the answer is we'll never know. Right. So, and it's also the kind of thing that is going to show up 6 months from now. So it's not the kind of thing that all of a sudden, Randy's deficient in zinc and he's going to keel over right here. You're just going to kind of watch some elements of his health deteriorate over time. And visually, I won't be able to tell it.
No.
Randy will be able to tell it because he feels crummy. But he won't even know why himself.
Yeah, well, and that's the same analogy. If I go eat some fast food one time today, you're not going to see any difference from me. But like you said, I may feel like crap the next day if I'm not used to that diet. But now 6 months later, 3 squares a day of the same stuff, we'll notice a difference visually.
This is actually a good story that somebody shared with me a while ago. It was about molybdenum. And so when you first hear the word molybdenum, you're like, what is that? Why would I ever use that? Who cares? It's just some random trace element. So what it actually does is regulates the rate of photosynthesis. And so there was some area of Australia that couldn't produce food anymore. They couldn't produce wheat, and it wasn't growing anymore. And eventually they figured out that the soil was deficient in molybdenum. They went out there and sprayed it on there. And then, the following years, they were exporting wheat.
Yeah.
Right? So it turns out the corals are regulating the rate of photosynthesis is important.
Same thing.
And you're stripping it all out with your refugium because that thing's sucking it all out.
That thing's sucking it out, too.
So these things matter. And if you feel like they don't, you can leave room for argument of when it will matter. But to say that the trace elements matter means that all known biology of animals, just throw it in the trash, garbage.
Yeah. That's not true. I refuse to believe that.
All right. So that said, so we can say that out loud. And what we can do by saying that out loud is acknowledge it. And now we can learn from it.
Yep.
It's going to be anecdotal. End of story. Because there is not going to be deficient, it's proof. If you're waiting for proof and exactly what zinc does, beyond a shadow of a doubt, peer-reviewed study, it's never going to happen.
No.
And it's a hobby, so you get to use anecdotal stuff. What I don't like is anecdotal from Randy determining for me. I can use Randy's experience, decide whether or not this is right for me, apply it to my own tank, and then decide whether or not it's worth what's coming out of my wallet.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I had a vision of what this was going to do. I'm going to watch it now for 6 months. Maybe I'll take some pictures along the way. And I'll decide whether or not the animals I care for are doing better because I chose to care for them differently. And if not, I don't even have to necessarily put the money back in my wallet. I can just find a different area that's going to produce better results. Something else will do that. Or, you know what? I go to the movies. Grab a beer with my buddies and spend the money there instead.
Stick your head in the sand about trace elements.
There you go, I can do that.
Go to the movies instead.
All right. And related to that, this is going to be hard to hear too. Survival isn't a measurement of success. The fact that you sit here living and breathing does not mean this is the healthiest version of Randy and Ryan that you can have. No. Same thing with the corals.
That came out of yesterday's conversation too. the survivability of our corals and our fish and things like that at the cost of algae eradication is just not a standard to live by. These are pets. Everything in this tank is alive and growing, and we should treat it as such, like I would my dog, just like I would myself.
So survivability means it's comfort zone. Like I haven't killed anything yet, or only a handful of things. But also, like with coral, what happens is they get stressed, and then they live in that stress zone for quite a while, surviving, and it just takes something to push them over the edge.
You accidentally did something changed.
Anything, man. A little bit of a temperature change, all that kind of stuff. It just kind of pushes it over the edge. And actually, again, I think we talked about it yesterday with Jake Adams, and he did a live video the other day about some of his corals, and he's super in tune with them. And he said he went to go see Worldwide, and they have the exact same corals that he has there as he has at his house, or his facility rather, and they just look better at Worldwide.
Yeah.
So this is surviving over at Jake's facility, and he acknowledges that he thinks it looks great. They look better here. They're growing faster. Their polyps are bigger, flusher. The coloration is better. The fluorescence is better. So is survivability the only goal? Let's challenge that, because I think we can do better.
Sure, we'll hear that in the future.
All right.
In the next few.
So this is the piece I've shared at a lot of trade shows, and like the analogies between human beings and corals aren't 100%, but like they're just to get you into the mindset again of survivability. I ask this question a lot, and I get various answers, which is, how long could Randy live on a diet of 3 squares a day of McDonald's?
I could probably live a long time.
Decades, I bet. He wouldn't be healthy or happy, but he would live. He'd be deficient in all kinds of minerals.
Vitamins and whatnot.
And like his eyesight's probably going, his joints are jacked, he's probably really fat, all kinds of other problems, but he's alive.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that's the same thing with the coral, man. Is like with the help of the zooxanthellae, they'll provide many of the amino acids, and they'll provide like a lot of the energy, but like the coral isn't going to synthesize molybdenum out of thin air.
Not thriving.
Yeah, it's not going to synthesize zinc out of thin air, and so we actually have to provide that. So I don't know, end of the analogies. Do what you want with that information, but I'm going to tell you right now, I think the best thing that we could do for the whole industry is accept the fact that these minerals regulate metabolic function. It's true. Yep. Now, how do we use that information to find definitive results with the corals that we all appreciate? Definitive results either being better coloration, better health, better polyp extension, healthier, lusher tissue, and specifically reduced mortality.
Yes.
All right.
Where we sit today in 2020.
Okay. Where we sit here in 2020.
Water changes.
Water changes with trace elements will actually take you a long way.
Yeah, 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can and actually, that was kind of the eye-opener one here. I don't see it on here on the list, but speaking to this point, when we were kind of coming up with the AKC, the BRS AKC, and that Tropic Marin blatantly said, don't dose trace elements in your first 2 years. Water changes will get you there.
Yeah, don't put this in. Don't use the product I want to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
Well, and I'm looking at the E170. And it grew from those tiny little frags. Now it's just like
just
overgrown jungle.
Yeah.
It was just doing 2-part and part C and water changes. And the mentality there was in the beginning when they're tiny little frags, you just don't need it. Like the water changes are enough not to fully replace it, but to slow the loss of minerals way down.
Yeah, it can get you a ways. But then, after a while, you're going to have to entertain them.
That is that important thing, man. This is the part that I don't think the hobby actually thinks about enough is the things and practices that I do in the first 2 years may be totally different for the years 3 and 4. It may be totally different again for years 8 and 9.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so at 3 and 4, this tank is now proportionally, there's going to be more coral than there's going to be water in there soon. Of course, it's uptaking trace elements much faster than it was before.
Yeah.
Right. And so now that kind of seesaw of trace elements and water changes that will eventually go down is now going down much faster. And so now it's time to take an approach to that. It was actually really refreshing to hear from Lou and Tropic Marine, like, yeah, we don't actually, it's nice to have a two-part that doesn't have the trace elements in it to begin with, because you might actually just be feeding like pest organisms and things in the tank, not necessarily your corals, when the corals are only this big.
Yeah, they're hardly consuming any of it.
Yeah. And it's also just a waste of money. They're like, thank you. There's no other word for it.
Thanks for not
and
pitching
it just like also made sense to me, and it actually fit right in the middle of my, like, you know what it did? It said, these guys aren't selling snake oil. That's what it said to me. These guys care about the outcome of my tank, right?
Yeah.
These guys care about the people that are doing this.
Not just trying to sell me some stuff.
Bravo. I don't know. That's what I got out of it.
Cool.
Okay. So also, we found Kalkwasser Reactor. Instead of using it in your ATO like I used to use it, use it in a reactor with the dosing pump.
Yeah, this is that mentality of from 2015 that has evolved almost 180 in that you didn't understand why people didn't rely on Kalkwasser. I didn't understand how far I could take Kalkwasser, but then you put it in a reactor and you feed it with a dosing pump as like a one-part solution rather than my ATO that's on the whim of how much it's evaporating the day on how much my tank that gets dosed. Maybe it needs more, maybe it needs less, but now I have a measurable one-part solution that if I need more, I can increase the dose. If I need less, I can decrease the dose.
Let me dumb that down one more step for you, because honestly, it's like not a way that most people think about this.
Yeah.
So most people hook up their calcium or their Kalkwasser, put it in a bin, their auto top off dumps it in, or they put it through a reactor, auto top off pump dumps it through it. You're at the whim and mercy of how concentrated that solution is, and how much your tank evaporated a day. It's really loose, you know.
Yeah, doesn't get you very far.
Except for, it's just like a less concentrated two-part in one part. I could choose to dose 2,000 milliliters of this a day. Through the reactor, from a freshwater bin, through the reactor, and it's just like dosing in one part, and the reactor keeps it close to max potency. And then if they're dropping, I can just dose 2,200 milliliters.
That's easy.
Yeah, I don't know. So that, I mean, like, instead of being at a whim of
your ATO.
I almost did this with the 360, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's not too late for me to actually consider
To do some
this.
Kalkwasser?
Yeah, well, to see how long the Kalkwasser takes me, because it's the cheapest solution out there.
That'd be interesting.
And I'm not really worried about trace elements in the beginning. I'm talking myself into this, actually.
Now that we're talking about it.
Like, why not? You know, like it's just a really inexpensive way that you got to buy the reactor, a couple $100, but they'll save it over two-part pretty quickly. I don't know. Yeah, so Kalkwasser, better run instead of in your ATO through a reactor as a one-part machine, and then use a dosing part to regulate how much you dose rather than being a whim of how much evaporation there is.
That's what we learned. That's where we're at in 2020.
I also learned that an EC pen will tell you the Kalkwasser's potency, so you don't have to just guess whether or not like you're depleted or not.
Electrical conductivity is the best way to measure.
It's basically from like the TDS meter guys, HM Digital.
Yeah, there you go.
So HM Digital sells a pen that's electrical conductivity rather than TDS. And TDS is just electrical conductivity with a multiplier on it. But with conductivity, you can stick the pen in when it's fully saturated. And I'll tell you that you may not ever hit full saturation, so don't go chasing that dragon. But you'll figure out where your balance ends up. And then you can just use that pen, and when it drops below that, you'll know, hey, you know what, add more powder, or it's time to swap it out, right? So if you use Kalkwasser, use an EC pen. It will tell you, whether or not it's time to change out the material. This is calcium reactor time.
Okay.
Right. This, man, we learned in 2020.
Love this one.
This is like, I would really consider using one of these now, which is, we now realize the value of pegging the pH in a reactor, and all the flow rate garbage doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, that I did extensive testing on. All right, pH at 6.7, flow at 10, 20, all the way up to 100, 120. And how does that affect the effluent concentration? And it's really not that big of a deal. Is it like dose more or dose less of that concentration?
So I'm hesitant to actually tell you guys the garbage that I was told prior to this. Because it's just going to lose you.
All theory.
When it's so much easier.
Yeah.
Okay, so the garbage on this is I'm dosing carbon dioxide to this thing to melt the media, lower the pH. I have to have a certain flow rate. If I increase the flow rate, then I have to increase the amount of carbon dioxide. Otherwise, the pH will drop. And every time you're like changing the amount you dose to the tank, and the flow rate is the amount that's going in the tank, so I can change the it's just a
flow
mess,
rate doesn't matter.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so throw all that garbage in the trash.
That's so way
If
easier.
you go in there and set the pH inside the reactor, use a pH controller. They sell like standalone ones.
Yeah.
Or you could use like an Apex. Set it in there to 6.7. It creates a stable concentration
like
of calcium alkalinity.
Like a single solution.
Potency of it is pegged the same way that your 2-part is pegged. It may fluctuate a little bit for sake of argument, but not really to any meaningful amount.
And now all I have to do is walk up and adjust how much I'm dosing to the tank.
Yeah, it's
Simple.
like you have a 1-part machine that creates this high concentration of it on demand.
And I turn it up if I need more. I turn it down if I need less.
Yeah, and so some
So
people
easy.
actually use like the dose and say, I just dose,
Split it up as multiple times a day.
Tens of thousands of milliliters a day. Or now more popularly is like the Kamor.
Yeah.
And just dose 40 milliliters a minute. And if I want to dose more calcium, 45. Done.
Easy.
I don't have to change the gas. I don't have to do any of the other garbage.
Yeah.
The pH controller will peg it for me. So if you want to use a calcium reactor, the only thing that you need to know at this point now is use a pH controller to peg the pH inside the reactor. You'll peg the concentration, and if you want, we actually sold the Kamor pump is the revolutionary part of this.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, you can just use a needle valve and figure out that you're getting 40 milliliters a minute and go change it. You don't need the $300 pump at this point. The important component is actually pegging the pH in there.
Pick a pH.
If you have the $300 in your pocket, the Kamor pump is
Go
actually
make the
really
dose.
easy.
Get the dosing pump.
But that changes it. So we also know in 2020 that I say this with a high degree of confidence that the calcium reactor media doesn't add any trace elements, not any, doesn't add of the 80 trace elements on the table, only probably a handful.
You need to approach trace elements separately if you're using a calcium reactor. Let's put it that way.
I will also tell you, of all the calcium reactor medias we used, it does do this one thing.
Regardless if it looks like coral, regardless if it looks like super crushed up reef saver rock or limestone or what have you, it will add phosphates.
All of them that we tested. I will say that there's one out there. The Elos used to sell one. I wish that thing disappeared. I wish to try that.
We haven't tried the Dastaco stuff.
That was the next one I was going to say,
yeah.
So I'd love to try that. But somebody out there, if the Dastaco one doesn't stand up to that test, we just haven't tested it yet.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
We need
If
to
somebody
get some
uses Dastaco calcium reactor media, go test
your
phosphate. If it's different in the effluent than it is in your tank, then it's adding it. It's just kind of real. It's just one of the things you have to deal with.
But like in last night's conversation, our filtration tools are so effective now that this phosphate adding machine is not a factor.
This is like a good way to talk about intelligent use of GFO, right?
Yeah.
So periodically run some GFO just to keep it down. And you're not adding nitrate here, so it makes total sense to use that tool that way.
Yeah, interesting.
All right. So calcium reactors are easier than we thought. One-part machines.
Yep.
Not the infinite matrix that was told me.
It was so confusing.
I see. 2020. I'm shocked that people mix up Browntown and put it in their tank.
This was it might be a slap in the face to some people.
Some people might not even know that they're not supposed to do this.
No, but after we did those videos on the ICP MS testing, and you visually see brown and crystal clear, the same chemical makeup, the same chemicals. Like, how could you dose Browntown when they're not in the same ballpark, even though in Browntown might even be more expensive than crystal clear?
I don't know. You guys can make up this for yourself, but for me, 2020, if I'm buying a commercial two-part, and I'm not even talking about using street de-icer here. If I'm buying a commercial two-part and it mixes up brown, milky color I can't see through, or even like has a tinge, and there's another option out there that's crystal clear, I don't know why. Give me a reason. Why is it that I'm so loyal to this brown thing? I don't have a reason, especially if it's more expensive.
Yeah.
I don't have a good reason.
Yeah.
So 2020, stop doing that. 70.
Everybody's asking what Brown Town is. I can see it.
Brown town. Yeah, it's mixing up your two-part, your calcium, whatever, and it looks visually brown.
I'll tell you, at the end of this, we have a playlist for all of these testings, things that we did. I'll put that as the at the end of here, so you can actually see the whole playlist on all those tests.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Let's see what Brown Town is.
70. pH matters. It does.
Yes.
Have you heard of ocean acidification?
I have, and it happens at tenths of a pH point.
Okay, so I did a video, a master pH, hydrogen, oxygen a while ago, and the process of doing some research and really thinking about this and collecting all of my thoughts about it is it's widely known. Every scientific entity out there will agree that the decline of the pH in ocean reefs from as little as 8.3 to 8.2, or certainly to 8.1, has wiped out entire reefs.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't wipe it out like got to 8.1. It actually just brings it down to a stress point because it's no longer able to build a skeleton as fast. The skeleton gets very brittle and the coral is stressed. And so when a heat wave comes through, or a hurricane and detritus gets spilled up, or any other stressful event happens, not a coral dies, the whole thing. Yeah. And so we know this to be fact. We've seen it time and time and time again. Everybody that does this for a living and researches this will agree. And in our tanks, we allow it to go all the way to 7.8.
Yeah, it's amazing how resilient our corals are.
And same thing, you bump the coral and it snaps, it's so brittle.
Yep.
Right? And then we do all these experiments and we find out that that's actually true. That we can double the growth rate of many of these corals by maintaining 8.3. Known science matches now our experience here. And so I will tell you that the easiest way is to open up your windows. It's not necessarily always sustainable.
Right.
Put in an air exchanger in your house to get fresh air in. But also to just use the CO2 scrubbing media or refugium. I mean, the refugium is probably the easiest possible way to make sure it doesn't go to 8.3 or to 7.8 at night.
Yeah.
But there's so many options out there now that this is that good enough mentality. This is the surviving, it's not dead, so I must be doing it right.
We were leaving on the table.
Yeah, if we're looking at all those oceans, those reefs that the whole thing's dead, that was a good enough mentality to some degree.
Yeah, right.
So we can do better, and then don't be surprised when a stress event happens and you lose a bunch of corals that you thought were otherwise healthy. They just weren't, and you know that because you're maintaining 7.8.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't use this as the shame stick of 7.8. I use it to really emphasize the value of fixing this, the importance. There might not be many things you could do in the tank because the way the coral works is it pulls that calcium and alkalinity out of the water into its tissue and it precipitates it out in a high pH solution to be able to grow its skeleton. If it's filled with excess hydrogen from the high pH in your water, it's unable to do that. Right? And that is why. So go watch, if you have any interest in this at all, go watch the Oxygen and Hydrogen Master series because it will become blatantly obvious why this is true. So this is 2020. We now know 7.8 isn't a nice to have. This is the goal. It will survive all going down to 7.8 for a while, even many years, as long as you do everything else right.
But you can do better at 8.3.
Boom. All right. CO2 scrubbing, recirculating actually works.
Yeah, we did. We had the big jumbo canisters on the 160 back this year, and or even kind of late last year. But you're kind of, if there's a lot of CO2, excess CO2 in the ambient room, you're sucking through that media super quick. It's not the cheapest thing in the whole world. And then here starts to come that evolution of how can you use this thing more effectively and not burn through a ton of media. Just recirculate it through that skimmer. Like the skimmer's
suck
drawing
the air of the top.
Yeah, exactly. It's drawing its own air and sucking it back through and going through.
Skimmer doesn't need fresh air to work.
No, and I'm scrubbing CO2 out of the tank.
Yeah, so that's the problem with the CO2 scrubbing media is you're just scrubbing all of the carbon dioxide out of your whole house, essentially.
Yeah.
If you put it in a recirculating design with your skimmer, you're just scrubbing it out of whatever was in the skimmer and what the water adds back to the skimmer slowly. So actually, this is one of the things I was going to hit up Kyle Elder about. He doesn't know this yet, but is let's make a cap that goes on the top of your skimmer cup that holds some of that media, has a little port, has some overflow in case your tank goes crazy and like the skimmer's foaming, it doesn't get into the media.
Yeah.
But I think most of these skimmer cups have like a very definitive size. So let's make a little cap that you can put on there. You can recirculate it. But better yet, let's make a skimmer that does that. Something we'll talk about in just a second.
Yes.
But CO2 scrubber media, this is a way you can buy one thing of media and it will last forever. And, I mean, not really forever, but instead of lasting weeks, it'll last many months.
Yeah, which was one of the biggest, which was one of the point of contention with, I think, when people started using a lot of them. When we said we were using it and then it was going out, people were like, it's only lasting me a week.
A couple weeks, yeah. So here's the thing: is if you want to with CO2 media, like especially if you're recirculating it, the whole pH thing and all those benefits we just talked about, doubling your growth and reducing mortalities and stress and all that stuff, could be had for about $11 per quarter.
I'd take that deal.
And it's running on a piece of equipment you already have on the tank. So like there's so many options out there. Like you don't have to feel like it's unobtainable. A refugium is obtainable for most people. Putting a lid on your skimmer with some media on it and a little DIY until there's a commercial option out there is an option to do that, and it's actually pretty inexpensive. All right, number 72, 2020.
2020.
Sodium hydroxide is now a thing.
It's a thing. People are starting to argue it. It's a better option. Do you know what sodium hydroxide is?
Lie.
It's lie. Have you seen Fight Club?
Oh, it's a power animal. Power animal.
No, it's a thing. It's a thing, and it has some. I mean, it's a alkalinity type of approach. Has a lot higher pH benefit. I don't trust myself with it though.
Yeah, so a lot of the DIY community has changed from baking soda or soda ash to sodium hydroxide. And by a lot, I don't know. A lot of people are talking about it anyway.
People are interested in it. Yeah.
So you can go to sodium hydroxide, and what it'll do is it'll raise the pH even more than soda ash does, right? Which is obviously beneficial to the conversation we're just having.
Yeah.
However, it is lye, which means that it will burn you, gets in your eyes and your skin, especially if like your hands are wet and then it gets a powder on it, it'll burn.
This environment seems ripe for that.
Yeah, it does. So if you're really, really good about chemical safety, this is actually a new pH solution that you can go out and look about. I do think some of the, two parts out there are partially based on lye now, like probably not all the way because of safety concerns, but like you're starting to mix soda ash with sodium hydroxide to get part of the benefit without making it super unsafe. I don't know. So you can start to see that out there. Calcium formate is now a thing. Formate. Calcium formate's now a thing.
This was a really interesting one. When Lou started to explain this to us last year and a little more this year, and a 1-part dosing solution, carbocalcium, that does the trick, alkalinity and calcium. It was something we're still learning more about, but it's really popular, and we're actually using Alpha Reef, which is the 1-part, carbocalcium plus trace elements, with success. It's really interesting.
The most amazing thing about this whole thing is actually they created carbocalcium. It was going to do calcium, alkalinity, and like trace elements all in one bottle.
Snake oil.
Snake oil alarm. It's going off all the way. Like everything I know is you can't do calcium and alkalinity in a single container other than Kalkwasser because of the hydroxide thing. It's a very unique thing.
Yeah.
Snake alarm going off all the way. Okay, and complication. These guys are Germans, which
they
means
won't tell you
my
what's
good
in
stuff. I'm not going to tell you what it is, except for they do.
Yeah.
They do. They tell you.
And
you
they
know
explain
what?
the processes behind it.
Yeah, this is calcium formate, guys, and this is how it works. Like, well, so for those who don't know, basically calcium formate goes into the water, the calcium pops off, the formate is consumed by bacteria, turns it into calcium or carbonate alkalinity. Kind of like Kalkwasser?
Kind of like
different, not really, but different. It does have two elements, and one of them ends up at carbonate. It happens over the course of days now instead of instantaneously.
Yeah.
But you've seen, if you've been watching, you've seen Zach's tank a million times. It was on this, and it thrived. And initially it was like, well, this is for medium demand tanks. I don't know. I call Zach's tank a pretty high demand tank.
Still kicking too. The best part too is that, the Alpha version has all the trace elements and stuff in it too.
I think they're coming out with a Powder Alpha Reef, by the way, as well.
Ooh, there you
so
go.
you can kind of mix your own and make it cheap. So yeah, I don't know. Germans. It's actually focused on making it affordable, and they're going to tell you what's in it. Whoa.
And they've been doing the baller method since 2004 or earlier.
If they do this one more time, man, they're going to kick them out of Germany. For sure. That'll be the last of it. We don't do this here.
Don't tell them what
I don't know. So I went all the way from snake oil to super duper impressed.
Yeah, really impressed.
I don't know. So Alpha Reef, very, very interesting thing. That is now a thing, 2020. And I'm going to tell you this one's kind of interesting. In some cases, precipitation now seems more theoretical than real. We've all seen precipitation on our heaters, pumps, all that kind of stuff.
I've had sheets of
Not saying that. But I got to tell you, as I was growing up in the hobby, I read all these articles that told me that, if I have unbalanced calcium alkalinity, if I have elevated levels of alkalinity or calcium, I'm going to have all kinds of precipitation. Levels are going to drop. They'll continue to plummet as the crystals grow. Blah, 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 blah. It's so many tanks that run elevated levels that don't have these problems.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know why my tank is this way at home, but my tank at home is a 500 calcium, and I'm not running corals or anything, and I haven't tried to fix this yet, but like mix up the salt and mix up this way. 500 calcium, it is I think a 9 DKH, or is it 10? And then 1500 magnesium. It's been that way for months now. Not getting precipitation. The levels aren't dropping. It might be because the pH isn't 8.3 yet, because I'm not bothering with that. There's no corals or anything in there yet. But like, the message here I think is be aware of why precipitation should happen. Know that elevated elements might do that. But if it's not happening in your tank, move the F on. Don't let it, what should happen in chemistry but isn't in your tank. Just be happy, man. Your tank's doing well. So move on. I don't know. All right. New in 2020. This is new. And actually probably going to be here for a long time now. The hybrid Bali method, which internally we're starting to call the AKC.
BRS AKC. So in our BRS Pharma Grade 2 parts with soda ash, and Trace Elements A and Trace Elements K, and Tropic Marin Balling Part C. There's a whole video on this one. Yeah,
I won't bore you with the details of it, but basically the balling method you can now do affordably by using BRS bulk chems along with the Trace Elements in Part C from Tropic Marin. For what it's worth, and we didn't just like make this up on our own. We actually worked with the Tropic Marin team to develop this.
Told us how to do it.
Got the right amounts of everything. And one of the other benefits, not only saving money, but with the original Bali method, they use sodium bicarbonate, which means you have to dose twice as much, and you don't get the pH elevation. There's some good reasons as to why they would do that. Specifically, it's sold on a shelf where they can't tell you that it's hard to convey the danger of overdosing pH solution. So, but watch the video if you're interested. It's called the BRS bulk hybrid method.
BRS Tropic Marin hybrid method.
We're going to start calling it the AKC.
AKC.
So it's A, K, and C. Man, there you go.
Easy peasy.
All right. Increasing alkalinity, increase coral growth rate. We now know that for sure.
We do. We did testing on it. We did multiple tests on this one, and that was tanks at 11 DKH and 480 calcium versus 9 DKH and 430 calcium or what have you. Increased calcium or increased alkalinity calcium levels, faster growing corals.
This is something that most people kind of thought was true, and then we just kind of found out for sure it was true. We saw it here when we changed the alkalinity consumption in the tank as well. So here's the thing, man, is increasing the alkalinity will increase the coral growth rate. And there's reason for this. If I can change my calcium point, from 420 to 460, I really only increased it 10%, right? The availability, net availability of calcium only went up a little bit. If I go from 7 to 9 or 10 or 7 to 11, I've increased the available carbonate in the water by 50%.
Yeah, because it's that times 7.
Yeah, and
roughly.
Because it's so scarce, there's actually an exponential effect there. So it's not a surprise. You can now own it. There's salts out there like Red Sea's Black Bucket that has a alkalinity of 11. Now, for the same reason in my test kit window, I'm a little worried it end up be 13.
You're riding the line, yeah. So you're choosing to ride the line.
That's part of the reason, by the way, that I'm actually really happy with picking 9. Is because I get some of that benefit, and I'm also managing the risk. So there we go. All right, so future.
Ooh, you guys made
That's
it to the future.
2020. That's 2020 where we live today. Where are we going to go in the future?
What do we want to see?
Wave the magic wand. It's 2025.
5 years
Where's
from now.
reefing going to be?
In trace elements, minor elements, major elements.
There's some things I would just like to see happen, and let's name them off.
All right, sweet.
All right, first one is accept that a large portion of the community has their own source of calcium and alkalinity. Provide packets of trace elements or liquid.
So you're saying, if you go over to our additives category on our site, and I see all of the available additives that supplement alkalinity and calcium, every one of those options should have some form of trace element option with them.
Well, so here behind the scenes is, 2004, 2-part was very lucrative.
Yeah.
You're selling baking soda with some trace elements in it for $20. So, but now that doesn't exist anymore because, bulk reef supply, it sells high-grade calcium. But also some people are still using DIY additives. But the part that you can't easily DIY is the trace elements.
Right.
So rather than we kind of mourn the loss of the fact that we lost out on the baking soda opportunity of the past,
Right.
do what is actually available, like the people would demand. Sell a tear strip pouch with the trace elements in it, or a bottle of liquid like the A and K right here. They've already done it.
Yep.
But even the Tropic Marin's already done it for you. But the other ones should too. So what if you're a Red Sea fan, or you're a Brightwell fan, or a Seacom fan? Why don't they provide you, assume that you have your own source of calcium and alkalinity, and give you the trace element solution, pack it, dump it in.
And some of those do, like KZ has the coral system 1 through 4 that you could use. Red Sea has A, B, C, and D that you could probably use.
It's really
too.
loose.
But
I want to make a gallon of solution.
Yep.
I'm using this much calcium chloride. Give me a pouch.
Yep.
Specifically, I guess I would say selfishly here, aim it at the BRS2 part because that's what probably, a vast majority of the people that are using their own source of calcium, chloride, and soda ash are using. But like, give them a little pouch, man. Own the world that we live in and do better. I don't know. So there you go. Same exact thing with fuge packets.
Yeah.
Refugium packets.
If you have a refugium, you need to address refugium. Like what your refugium is stripping away from your coral zooxanthellae.
Yeah, so right now, you gotta go out there and buy the, Triton other method, or no, Triton Core 7 and use that because it has the extra
Counts for
molybdenum
those,
or whatever.
yeah.
But like, what if I have virtually any other 2-part and I just want to add some of that stuff in there, know that I've covered those things. Give me a little pouch, give me a little like bottle, I can add 4 milliliters to my gallon of solution and know I'm covered. Now, Brightwell has like kind of been
Cato
first
Grow.
to market that with Cato Grow.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have directions though on it, like for every gallon of solution you make, dump it in there. It's actually kind of more manage it independently. But with the amount of people out there, which is really, really high, managing nutrients with a refugium, an algae reactor, or an algae scrubber, all of which suck out the nutrients that are important for photosynthesis.
For algae.
Yeah, out competing the algae that lives within our coral,
Yeah.
being the zooxanthellae. Let's add this back in, right?
Yeah.
And so I would actually prefer that a lot of them make their own refugium version. But if that's not going to exist, give us a little pouch, give us a little liquid we can dump into whatever 2-part you want to use, and know that you got it covered that way.
Awesome.
I'd like to see that by 2021. That's 5 years, guys. I was hopefully getting done sooner than that. All right. I'd also like to see more options for calcium or concentrated calcium, kind of like what Triton does.
Yeah, you can increase the concentration of calcium solution pretty far. The problem is trying to you can only go so far with sodium bicarbonate or sodium carbonate. It will not. You can't just add more and make it more concentrated. There's a point. So to make dosing easier, you just make calcium chloride solution about the same, so they're kind of in equal ratios.
100 milliliters this,
Yeah.
100 milliliters that.
But you can actually increase that concentration of calcium.
Okay, so I've seen this done really poorly.
Yeah.
So Triton did it pretty well. They doubled the concentration of the calcium, and then you just dose double the amount of alkalinity as calcium. So it's a 2 for 1. So I have 50 milliliters of this one and 100 of that one. I can do that math, right? Then I've seen other people like take it the other extreme. Let's make the calcium
Weak.
as potent as possible, right? All the way to the max saturation. But now the calculation is 7.64 to 1.
Yeah. I can't do that.
I can't do that, man. I can do it once, but every time no.
Okay.
Let's do it like 5 to 1. Let's do it 2 to 1. Let's do it 3 to 1. But like we're shipping around water for no reason.
That's the biggest part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like let's make it more concentrated. I don't have to fill the jug up as often, let's stop selling water. All right. So I think in the future, 2025. Magic wand, I'm predicting the future. All right, I think calcium formate and Alpha Reef is going to be one of the most popular options out there, specifically with newer reefers that hold on to it and become older reefers on
That's
it.
all I need to do is dose this one solution. I have one dosing pump, and it manages all these things you're telling me that I need to be worried about? Yeah.
Yeah, well, so if I got trace elements, calcium, and alkalinity all in one solution, one dosing pump, and it works. It's producing it the same way on on Zach's tank.
I'm sold.
It's
going to be super popular.
Yeah, why? Why anything else? And it's not super duper expensive.
It's not super duper expensive.
Alpha Reef kind of is, but like now
They're
the
gonna
new
make a
powder
powder
version
form.
isn't. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that's going to be a real. You're hearing a good amount now. I think it's going to dominate the conversation in 5 years. Kalkwasser in a large reactor or a reactor should be dosed like a 1-part machine in the future. We should get rid of the ATO.
Yeah, get rid of the ATO dosing.
The reason that I would use Kalkwasser also as a 1-part, the reason I would use it over the calcium formate or the Alpha Reef is the pH benefit. So if you want to get to 8.3, Kalkwasser is one of the best avenues to be able to do it because it sucks up all the carbonic acid out of the tank. All right. Lower cost dosers that dose slower. I'd like to see this for 2025. So one of the biggest benefits with BRS dosers,
You can't make it go
1.1.
faster,
was 1.1 milliliter.
no matter what.
Drip.
Now, there's dosing pumps out there right now that can dose that low.
Expensive.
But they can also go really fast, too.
Well, like the dose from Neptune can go that slow. Probably the Versa. A lot of them, though, they're just like squirted in.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing that like people don't realize is your tank's like a 7 DKH. When I just go squirt a whole bunch of that in there, I'm creating a DKH of like 900 right in that little
that
pocket right
concentrated
there.
area, yeah.
And so don't be surprised when you end up with precipitation issues and all kinds of other stuff. So yeah. So what I'd like to see is like with the BRS doser, it was great that it's been around for so long. It's still what I use in many cases unless I'm going to go fancier than that because it's just so slow. Whatever I use, a two-part, I'm going to make sure it goes super slow. And this is one of the least expensive options. But it's still like it's not like the new era of dosing pumps that has like all the timers and
Wi-Fi
gadgets
and this
Wi-Fi.
and,
But for me, form is over function or function over form.
Yeah.
I want it to go slow. I use this tool to manage the chemistry of my tank, and so Wi-Fi app that does that poorly. I'll take the BRS doser. I'll plug it into my controller or a digital timer or whatever because it does it better.
Yeah.
The function is better.
Yeah.
But I would like to see though is like the Comore pumps of the universe. Like let's slow those things down. Let's do not even like 1 milliliter, 1.1 liter a minute. Let's do 1/10 of a milliliter a minute. Spread it out over the whole day or many hours. Let's do it really, really slow because that's how we manage chemistry best. 2025. Let's see that.
82.
Which one are we on?
82.
82. Clean calcium reactor media.
In
It
5
might
years,
exist.
it might exist.
Well, it might exist now. I've got to test that.
We do have to test some more.
But somebody out there, because I don't want actually coral skeleton anymore because the trace element thing isn't real to me anymore.
Yeah.
And the phosphate thing is real. So I'd rather have precipitated pure calcium carbonate as the
Instead of phosphate
media that I have. So I'd rather have a artificial synthetic calcium carbonate as my source for my calcium reactor.
True.
So let's see that by 2025.
And 84.
And skimmers. This is the one.
This is the one.
So if you want
To make some money.
to make $1 million
Here it is.
or more, maybe many millions of dollars, and you've been waiting for this because we mentioned this hours ago.
Depends on how well you do it.
Here it is. This is the thing that I think is going to change by 2025. You're going to see somebody do this in maybe the next year. You're going to see many people copying them. This is going to be revolution.
If anybody's heard the pH conversation we've been having and how important this pH is, how easy and cheap and cost-effective it could be to use like CO2 scrubbing media, make a recirculating skimmer made for CO2 scrubbing. Or even just the accessories for them, or lids, or whatever. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Don't make me DIY this.
Because now we have to drill a lid and worry about that leaking water and coming through the hose into my media.
Design a protein skimmer that is designed to be used with CO2 media in a recirculating design that is redundant and safe.
Interesting that skimmers are still made, and I don't know how popular ozone is or was in the past, but skimmers are still being made with the selling point that it's ozone ready. And that's never been a selling point for me personally.
CO2
if
ready.
you tell me if it's CO2 scrubber ready, I'll have my dollars.
Okay, I'm going to actually say one more. And some people don't care about this. I walk into my fish room, and if I haven't cleaned the skimmer cup, it smells like shit in there because that's what's in there, right? And like, well, why does it smell so bad? The lid's closed. Because the air is being blown past the decaying poop out of the holes into the room.
Yeah, those holes are there to vent for that very specific purpose.
So if not CO2, carbon ready. Let's put like a little lid on the top of the lid, man, a little lid that holds like a tiny thin layer of carbon so the room and my house doesn't smell like poop.
And then you can use that space to put your CO2 scrubber line in. Don't have to worry about water.
All right.
Interesting.
This is
make money,
definitely-
people. Go and make money.
This is an evolution. Hopefully somebody of merit is listening. They're going to go create this.
I don't care about ozone ready. I care about CO2 scrubber ready.
Like people have been using skimmer. This is one of this is potentially a bigger benefit
Of using a skimmer?
Than the fact that it skims. It may actually produce better results as a CO2 scrubber than it does as a skimmer. And in fact,
it doesn't even have to do the skimming. It could do a dual purpose.
Maybe that's the answer.
Maybe that's the answer. You're
it's
making
a whole different line of gear.
That's not a skimmer.
It works really well as a skimmer. They're using a needle wheel pump to whisk all that air. But maybe it's never even designed to skim at all.
It's made for CO2 and it's called a pH controlling machine of some sorts. That's the long name for it.
I mean, you should figure out the acronym.
Yeah, probably.
Of some sorts. Okay.
Make that, people, please. We want to see that in 5 years.
Okay.
All right.
This one's on us. Oh, no.
No, 85.
85.
This one speaks to me.
Okay. An all-in-one calcium reactor design. Let's simple this baby down.
I mean, you make me. This is probably why I was attracted to it, because it said I have to get this regulator that's got a bunch of needles and stuff on it. I got to go get this CO2 tank, which is really cool, and I've got to get a dosing pump, and I've got to get the pH probe and the pH monitor and the controller and all of this stuff you build in. I mean, I put quite a bit of investment into this thing just to get all the parts and pieces. Build me a kit. Build it all in one. Send it to me with everything I need.
This is my vision.
All right.
I don't know if there's enough people out there with buying calcium reactors these days
to make millions.
To make millions. But you can make hundreds of thousands. Okay.
Tens of thousands, if not.
The calcium reactor, people don't use it not because they're unwilling to buy it. It's because they don't want to learn how to use it, right?
So
it's
many
an
moving
intimidation
pieces.
factor,
Yeah,
right? All right, so now imagine this world. Let's erase the history. This is now one unit.
It's a one-part dosing machine.
One unit, one-part dosing machine. It doesn't have a pH controller on it. It has a little box on it that says...
Which pH would you like?
Not even pH. Screw the pH thing out of it. It just says high concentration, medium concentration, low.
Scale of
and the
what,
difference
1 to
is,
5?
6.5, 6.7, 6.9.
You don't have to tell me what that means.
Yeah, you don't have to know. You just have to know more concentrated, less concentrated.
Yeah.
I've got a continuous duty dosing pumping on there telling me how much I want to dose.
Yeah, so when I reach the limit of how fast that thing can dose, I go, higher concentration knob, one click, and now I go back to the flow again.
Click. I don't have to go to a welding shop to go get a CO2 canister. It turns out I can buy this type of thing as a soda stream from Target.
There you go.
Right? So let's get these tiny little guys that you can just
Replaceable.
replace in. They're recyclable and all that kind of stuff.
With a meter on
I
them,
can
tell
get
me
it
when
at
it's getting
Target
low.
while I'm getting my paper towels.
Yep.
That thing, people will buy.
Yes.
That thing's got 2 buttons, higher concentration, lower concentration. This is how much I dose. I pop in my soda stream, done.
Fill in the media when I need to.
People will buy it. I'll buy it.
Heck yes.
Yeah, okay. By 2025.
Think of how compact you could use, and that means it'll fit under my 60-gallon tank stand. I don't have all of this equipment with a big giant CO2 tank that I got to try to find room for. It's about this size. Dang.
There it is.
I want that.
Okay. I wanted to, I don't know. You said it out loud.
Talk me into it. I want one.
How do we make this thing? I don't know. Okay. All right. So we're on
86.
86.
Here's what we want to see in the future.
I think we're going to see calcium recommendation to be 440, alkalinity of 9, magnesium at 1350.
No change.
I don't think it's going to change.
That's the logic, sound reasoning.
If there was one thing in there that might change, maybe magnesium goes to 1400.
Yeah.
That would be the only surprise. I don't think I'm going to change my opinion on calcium or alkalinity because there's unlikely to be new information between here and there. They would drastically change my belief and the accuracy of test kits, my belief that I'm never going to let my alkalinity run dry, all that stuff. I also don't need to, at this point in my hobby, I don't need to run the bleeding edge of the highest possible level.
Be the pioneer.
Yeah, so for me, and so in relation to that, I feel like I've made a pretty good case for this.
Yep, I agree.
I think we're going to see some salt mixes that actually come out with those numbers.
If that's where I want to target, yeah.
And specifically, you can change calcium and alkalinity fairly easy. One of the things that people overlook a lot is
salt mix,
when you try to fix your salt mix, you're buying this other salt mix and you're trying to fix it into what you need it to be.
With a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
It's the magnesium portion, because once magnesium, to add it, you need to add a lot usually to change it. And what happens then is the salinity goes up.
Yeah.
All right, so then to make the salinity go down, I actually have to add more water, which will bring the magnesium down, but also bring the calcium and the alkalinity down at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you just end up playing mad scientist with this bucket of salt, specifically when you're trying to change a big 100 or 200 point change of magnesium. Alkalinity and calcium, less so.
Give me a salt that's already there.
Yeah. I think we're also going to see in the future more salts like ESV
Oh, yeah. This
that
was a
don't
good
precipitate because of the way they're mixed. And hopefully we'll see it in single-use pouches.
That came out in 2019. That's all that salt testing stuff that we did in the back that I did, and seeing how there was a big. First of all, there was a big call for ESV because it wasn't included originally, and then we decided, all right, we're going to come back, circle back, and add ESV in the mix. Crystal clear. It's one of the only ones that was no precipitate, mixed crystal clear, mixed in minutes, the fastest mixing, but it's because of their approach on how it's mixed and individual alkalinity, calcium, magnesium pouches and the way you mix it.
So I'll just give you a real quick rundown on why that's better. So when you mix all of it into a salt mix, it's hopefully homogeneous, but which is impossible to get 100% perfect.
Yeah.
Mix in all at the same time. I'm dissolving calcium, sodium chloride, magnesium, alkalinity, all this stuff at once, and I'm hoping none of it forms a crystal and precipitates at all, which is impossible.
Yeah.
And just doesn't work. So one of the ways that ESV kind of gets around that is you dissolve the sodium chloride first, then you dissolve the magnesium. The magnesium will poison the surface of a newly formed calcium carbonate crystal to prevent it from growing.
Yeah.
And then I add the calcium, alkalinity, and trace elements in the two individual bottles of liquid.
Liquid
Now,
already.
Liquid is actually very easy to make homogeneous in a solution.
Yeah.
So what I've done now is made sure that there's a reason why this dissolves so fast. High purity sodium chloride, and by the way, most of that brown crud that you see is actually the crud from the sodium chloride. Sometimes calcium, magnesium
from
chloride,
where it's mined, and
yeah, but people think it's like clay or something, but my experience is it's actually impurities in the source material. So you can do with that what you want.
Yep.
But so here's the thing. I'd like to see this, but I'd like to see it a little different. Let's mix the sodium chloride and the magnesiums into a homogeneous mix. I don't want to have to measure all that garbage out, right? Then I can dissolve those two things. Those things don't precipitate. And then it's ready for the two liquids. And instead of giving me all these measuring cups and having me do all this stuff.
Pre-portion.
Yeah, pre-portion.
20-gallon mix.
Make a 20-gallon mix, a 40-gallon mix, a 60-gallon.
Sizes.
Yeah, brute trash can sizes mix. Yes, that's a great way to say it. So what I can do is strip out the salt, let it dissolve in its 2 minutes, and then dump all of the containers from these two in there. It's
I've
done.
got 40 gallons, just like that.
I've got all the value of it, and let it be $4.49 and $13.50.
Done. These are small asks. People. Small asks.
So this is a better way of doing it. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it, but this is a better way of doing it. And I think that you're going to see people pick up the better way by 2025.
Okay.
Well, can't wait to look. I can't wait to go to 2025
to look back at these videos.
We'll see if this happens.
Remind us, folks, that 2025 we need to rehash these.
All right, this one's on us.
Okay.
Let's find out the answer to when precipitation happens to a meaningful degree, or ways to prevent it.
It's more than just alkalinity here, calcium here, alkalinity here, calcium here, alkalinity here, calcium here. All of those are a lot of ways dependent on the magnesium, and even more so probably dependent on the pH.
Yeah, it's like your alkalinity level, your calcium level, your magnesium level, your pH level, your temperature level. Like, so when all these people run like really high calcium alkalinity and they're not having any precipitation, but your tank looks like garbage and the heaters are covered. Why is it? What's defining these two things? I mean, I think I can like guess at some of it, but let's find the actual points at where that stuff starts to happen. Share it with the community. So there's dozens of tanks back there in the wall. Let's start mixing up salts in various methods and figure out at what pH and temperature does precipitate start. And at what levels, and can we, say, let's find out the answer to the question, like say I want to have elevated calcium and alkalinity, and I want to have a pH of 8.3. Normally, I would have all this precipitation and it would be hard to maintain. I have to keep dumping stuff in.
Here's how
but what if I have a 1500 magnesium? Maybe that's worth it for me. I'm running the bleeding edge here and I know it, but at least I'm making an intelligent decision. Let's find out the answer to that question. That one's on us. So I don't know who else would do that one. So on us, I don't expect that to be 2025. I would like to see that as 2021. But yeah, we'll find out that answer. I'd also like to see other, like kind of related to the earlier ones, two parts formulated for refugium.
Yeah, have that stuff like even BRS. This one's on us too. Could be. Why not find a solution for? Are you using BRS 2-part with a refugium? You probably need this. Are you using an algae scrubber or a reactor? You probably need this.
How about AKCR?
There you go.
There we go.
Just did it. Boom. Watch for AKCR in 2025.
Maybe we could actually just get some stuff that goes in there. So I added another thing.
AKCR.
Okay, there we go. All right, so I'd also like more options without water in them. You don't know it, but you're paying a lot of money for water.
If you get your 2-part solutions in liquid form, you're paying a lot of money for water.
So the reason is that thing needs to ship from sometimes Europe to the United States to the distribution point to the local distribution point to the person, and then like if it comes here, then it's got to ship out of here, and like all this other stuff. You're paying for so much shipping of volumes of water for no reason at all. You're buying water, and it's also like a devious way of making it feel like you've got more than you got, right? Anyway, so I'd like to see more options and make a dry solution. Let's make it easy to use. This was a big hit, actually. So
single use?
Yeah, these single use things that we did here, for those who don't know, like these are more expensive than buying it bulk for sure because it's more work to put in more packaging. Right. But you tear it off, you dump it in, you're done. No measuring or anything. So for all the manufacturers out there that might be listening, this is the way to go. People, reefers really like this. They'll pay the extra $1 for it or whatever it is.
Even us, and even like me as the end user of shipping liquids, it'd be nice if my package didn't show up because UPS kicked it and there's water everywhere.
It's frozen.
Yeah.
And actually some do worse. Some of the 2-parts out there like bridge the gap and kind of dissolve it. So it's like concentrating there, but what happens is, like, especially in the winter, it turns into a giant rock at the bottom. It's impossible to dissolve.
Yeah.
I would so much rather you just give me pattern. I'll dissolve it myself because dissolving that rock is a giant pain in the butt.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah. All right. So
dry options.
More in 2025 of the people that want to do well in the 2-part market, get rid of the water. It serves no purpose. Like it's not that like I know a lot of people like to just pre-mixed. So the solution here is make it easy to mix. Just fill it up with water. Done. Like
pre-portions.
If it's cheaper, most people will do it as long as it's easy. All right.
Next one's on us too.
Next one's on us. All right. So BRS should have a calculator with all of these.
We ask. I think we ask almost every year to add more to the calculator. Add more to the calculator. Add more to the calculator. 2025.
All right.
ESV calculator, you're using Reef Code A and B calculator.
All right, I'm gonna get my magic wand out.
All right.
All right. So I actually have a say in some of this stuff. And so, but there's a lot of demands. I've been adamant about the calculator for a long time, not just this, but like
Sand.
I want a calculator for sand, like everything,
yeah,
man,
everything.
right? The calcium reactor stuff.
Yep.
I want to see Calculator City. I also want to see an app, so you don't have to go to our website. You can just open up an app on your phone. Not 2025. 2021.
Ooh.
Oh, I'm making that prediction, and then by making a prediction, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna like take out my staff and put it in the ground and say, guys, it is time to push this thing over the edge. I don't want to hear any more excuses. App time.
And Nick used to be our moderator for the group. He's already started this.
Oh, really?
He started down the path. He has a calculator based off of our calculator, but we want to expand on it.
All right, I want a Calculator City.
Everything, right. Calculator.
So that one's on us,
Right.
but we should have it. Like if you want to use, Brightwell's Reef Code A and B, you want to use the Red Sea one. You shouldn't have to like go to each one of these individual websites and try to hunt
Read
it down.
the directions. Go find somebody who's done this easy work for you.
Bali method. No, man, let's get it all in one place and make it easier, because easier means you'll do it.
If we sell it, we should have a calculator.
All right, graded material for those who want it better. Okay, so the guys over at Tropic Marin, their salt says pharmaceutical grade in the front. So to me, if you're going to make me pay for something that costs more, I want to know why. I want to know something definitive that makes this thing better than the other stuff out there. And in terms of like chemical, quality of source chemical is a big piece of that.
So you're saying if you already sell me a product right now, I need to have a grade. It should have a grade on it.
If you sell me the cheapest available product out there, I don't need the grade because I already know. Right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to sell me the most expensive stuff out there, I want to see the grade on the bucket.
Yep.
I want to see it on the jug. I want to know, is this food grade? Is it pharmaceutical grade? Is it tech grade? Is it ungraded? Is it just your promise?
Is it just expensive because you want to make a buck?
Yeah, is it expensive because you want to make a buck? Is it expensive because it goes through 5 levels of distribution? I want to pay triple or quadruple what I pay for anything else. Tell me why.
Yeah.
Be brave and tell me why. In relation to that, the next one is define what's in the damn container.
Yeah.
2025.
All the important elements.
Yeah.
Get rid of that.
This isn't magic mixy elixir. You're not giving away the secret recipe here. Tell me what is in this bottle, in what level? Like, is this got iron in it? Does it have molybdenum in it? Does it have zinc in it? Define what's in it. Define what level that it's maintained at in there. I'm not looking for accuracy, but
no. But I want to be able to make my own decision if I want that element.
Why do I want to make that own decision? Well, because all of our tanks are different. And so if I use some two-part out there, and through ICP I find out that my zinc and cobalt are just always either deficient or skyrocketing.
I'm going to go seek out the ones.
I'm going to go find the one, a different two-part out there that actually has higher cobalt and magnesium or whatever it is that's deficient in.
Yeah.
Give me the ability to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Instead of just hope and pray that you have my best interest. So especially, man, if you're going to sell the most expensive stuff out there, give me more data on why that is. And the last one, no more Browntown. Let's raise the standard.
I'm glad you brought up Browntown at the end too. Browntown. There's a lot of questions on what Browntown is. You need to see it for your own eyes. So once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it's there. Browntown exists in the additives. It's brown. It could be a different shade of brown. It could be whatever. You visually see brown.
Pink.
Let's get rid of it.
But if you mix up your additives or even your salt mix and it turns into a brown, cloudy mess and all kinds of garbage settles out at the bottom, it better be cheap. It better be cheap, and you better
and you're choosing it because it's cheap.
And do the math.
Yeah.
Think about what it is you're saving on a monthly level and whether or not it's relevant to your aquarium. Because if it's saving you $100 a month, that is relevant to almost everybody.
Oh yeah.
If it's saving you $1.35,
that's
and you gave me
decision.
If you gave me one option that's crystal clear and clearly graded, and you gave me another option and it's full of brown and not, and this one had $1.30.25 taped to it, I would definitely take this one. I don't know. That's just me. But like for me, I think in 2025 we can, raise the standard collectively.
Yeah.
We can push for something better. We can create our own pet grade and get rid of lower standard materials. So, was there any questions in here?
Yeah, there's one. Take David L's comment that just came up here on the other side. Yeah, the top. Because we didn't say this yet, but Browntown. If it's brown, or if it's visual, what is it? It's not trace elements. It's not vitamins, and he's kind of making light of that.
Yeah, it's not beneficial.
It's not beneficial if it's brown. You can see it.
It's an impurity. Is it toxic? I don't know. A single dose? No. Is it toxic in 4,000 doses?
After amount of time?
Who knows?
Could be.
Why find out?
All right. Let's start with the 14. We got $15 from David L. Who
oh,
we
thank
just
you very
about.
much.
Awesome live chat. Thanks for the excellent
thank you
information.
Very much.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that. $5 from Nolan, who says,
thank you.
pair character lifting some weights, saying keep it up. Okay.
Ah.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Budget reefing. Will LPS affect alkalinity and calcium?
Absolutely.
It grows a skeleton structure.
Yeah, especially as they get bigger.
Yep.
Will it take it up as fast as
SPS?
like a bunch of stags? No. But
it will.
You definitely will see benefit out of maintaining it. You'll probably see less mortalities with the individual heads, and you'll see them grow faster.
Paul Lenz asks, was the testing of all those two-part dosing products the most expensive experiment that BRS has ever done?
No, it's not. So it's 20 grand to do that test, but like what you guys probably don't know, behind the scenes is there's people that work here. So I mean, there's probably 200 grand in salaries for people that do all the testing here. There is all of this equipment, like that little Hawk thing was 20 grand. When we did the
chloramine test?
The chloramine test for the wall, I think that was almost 10 grand just to find out whether or not for one specific, just for carbon blocks alone.
Yeah.
We bought the flow meter that we haven't got into. I think that was close to 7 grand.
Yeah.
So and then when you open up all of the lights, you're
par
pushing
meters and
tens.
spectrometers, and then opening the lights because we're just taking them off of our shelves to learn for ourselves. They're not. They're in many cases not donated. So.
You know what? I try not to think about it because.
Hopefully, Bob didn't make it 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, Bob, our CFO. If he's watching, I'm in big trouble. But no, it's definitely expensive. But I want to know definitively. I don't want to just say ours is the best, because it's the best.
Yeah.
I want to send it out to an independent lab. I don't want to use ICP testing. It's like hobby grade. We went to the next level of MS, which goes a little deeper. It's certified and has a different kind of standard to it. And I really want to know. I want to know the answer to these questions. And actually, this is a good thing, man, because what we shared is largely we were better than all of them. But in one, like the magnesium one, Brightwell was better than us.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the people that watch this was one of the coolest experiences for me in the hobby. Is while I was doing it, I told Jeremy that we were going to do this, and at the time, I don't know if I'd define us as friends or not at the time, but we were friendly.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want in.
Blindly.
No, not blindly, because I said straight to his face,
you
know what
have
goes
to
into
report.
pharmaceutical grade materials.
Yeah. We have to share the results.
You are not going to be as good in most of this stuff.
He wanted his name named.
Yeah, and you're like, you are not going to be cheapest. Why would you want to do this?
Yeah.
And he's like, if I'm going to sell chemicals, I have to be able to stand behind the products. And I'm okay with the fact that I'm not cheapest, but I need to be able to stand in front of people and say that I'm willing to be transparent.
Yeah.
Dang. I've never met anybody in the entire industry to this point that has wanted that level of transparency, especially when they know that they're not going to end up being the cheapest available option in that quality range. Balls. I don't know, man. It just says I want to be better. I want to be part of the conversation, and I want the people to know that I'm transparent and you can believe what I say.
We want to see more of that in 2025.
Damn straight. Yeah, I don't know. That was a really impressive thing. So I don't know. That was a long-winded answer.
Last one here, and hey, David L., we knew you were making light. Don't worry about it. We were laughing with you. Yavi says, for 2021, I want something like a Trident to auto-test nitrate and phosphate accurately.
You know, the guys over at Neptune have asked me, other than phosphate and nitrate, if there was a third thing, what would you like the Trident 2 to test? It kind of implies that those two are on the
working
list,
on
because it does three things.
Those are the next two on the
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they're super busy. I don't know when that will actually materialize, but like for sure, I would expect that to come.
Yeah.
And you know, that's kind of the benefit of the whole Neptune ecosphere, is they're like constantly dumping money back into the ecosphere, not just sitting around counting it and putting it in the bank. You know?
Come up with something.
Actually, I had a pretty long conversation with them about that today.
Yeah.
Like how hard it is to grow, because all of the money that they make just goes back into more inventory for growth and, you know, like new initiatives and new products coming out with this thing. When a lot of other companies are stagnant, they just, you know, created something and they'll ride that thing to the end. You know, as long as they'll just keep making subtle tweaks to it until like it stops printing money. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
All right, tomorrow, 6 o'clock again.
Yep.
You'll see us again tomorrow.
History, not a brief history of, but a history of.
Oh my gosh. What did we do today?
2 hours,
2 hours and 24 minutes?
We hit it. Same thing.
We beat yesterday. Oh my gosh. All right, so 2 hours and 24 minutes. You're going to see 2 hours and 26 minutes tomorrow on something. I can't tell you what it is because I don't know what it is yet.
We're going to find out.
Tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up 7 o'clock and I'm going to start digging in my brain on what it is we're going to talk about.
In the meantime, you should go check out this playlist of those testing things that we did.
Actually, no, not to play this, because if you didn't see it yesterday, there's one here about nutrients you should check out.
Oh, yeah.
In this playlist.
Yes, yesterday's.
And a history of controllers that we were just talking about. Go check that thing out, too.
Both are in that playlist.
Yeah, all right. You know what? You can do two, can't you?
What? Oh.
Two playlists. I don't know.
Maybe
you'll see two in just a second.
I might have the ICP testing, MS testing, and I might have the yesterday's and other histories of.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, guys.
6 o'clock Central.